I am filthy filth. A disgusting illegitimate child born under a noble above all else. People always looked at me with contempt and gave me the back finger of scorn. A lowly, disgusting piece of filth under the sun. That was me. However, I had one such talent, and it was the very power of healing. Heal. Healing is a blessing bestowed by the heavens to those who are suffering from illness. Healers who could use heals received high treatment and enjoyed wealth and prosperity regardless of their status. As a filthy bastard, I struggled to survive, to be recognized as a decent being. But I was also a pathetic healer. Below grade F. That was my healing power. I tried so hard, but I could not overcome the barrier of my talent. I've been stuck in my apprentice status for 5 years, and now I play miscellaneous roles for other healers. A gruff guy. A dirty guy. A pathetic person. Those were the words that were used to describe me. But then, one day, a miracle happened to me. You've awakened as a player. Job surgeon. The miraculous ability of the medical art of the place called Earth was put into my body as an F-grade flunking healer. You've awakened as a player. Raymond thought the message was just a dream. Wasn't that obvious? A surgeon, not a healer? Sir. Gian? What the hell is that? Raymond chuckled. Not only that, but it was something he'd never heard before. It was the first time he had seen it. It was a gray, inorganic space. A patient? A patient was lying on a high bed in the middle of the room, bleeding profusely. Vitals? They're bleeding too badly. Get a blood transfusion there faster. Squeeze it with your hands. In that dream, Raymond was a healer, in a blue surgical suit, a doctor, and to his surprise, he understood the meaning of the terms people used. Vitals. Blood transfusion. Levofed. Even though they were all new terms. Double the amount of Levofed. Yes, sir. A new person appeared. He was a small man in a surgical gown, and the way he looked at the patient showed a strong will. 1, Kelly. In response to the man's words, the dreaming Raymond handed over the iron tools. Yes, Professor. It's right here. The man with the steel-like impression moved his iron tools. Clank, clank. The opening of the artery, which was bleeding profusely, was firmly identified, and the patient came back from the brink of death with a divine touch. Raymond was startled out of his dream. What was that? Was it an empty dream? It was too vivid a dream for that. Vital signs, blood transfusions, Kelly, etc., to name a few. All the concepts of the terms he heard for the first time in the dream were still vivid in his mind. That wasn't all. The contents of my dream. It was a splenectomy, operating on a patient with a ruptured spleen. Surgery. Splenectomy. Raymond thought of those terms. It's not some kind of pseudo. All the treatments on the continent of Leofantina, where Raymond lived, were done by healing. Surgery to open up the patient's abdomen to treat them? He had never heard of such a treatment. However, Raymond could feel it instinctively. He knew that the cure he saw in his dream was not a fake. In fact, it was a much better and more reliable treatment than the existing one. What the hell happened to me? That way he was confused. Something even more unbelievable happened. A message appeared in front of him. Congratulations on your awakening as a player. The player's occupation is surgeon, occupation grade, SSS. Check out the status window. Status window? As he mumbled in his mind, the following message came to him. Player status. Name, Raymond. Class, surgeon, SSS. Occupational grade, novice resident. Level 1. Experience, 0/50. Skill points, 0. Auxiliary occupations, not activated. Skills. Stamina, 3. Senses, 2. Intellect, 17. Attribute skills. Heart of Steel, D. Ancillary skills. None. The player's level is too low to use the surgeon ability. Treat your patients and gain experience. The higher your level, the more infinite growth you will be able to achieve in the future. Raymond blinked as he looked at the message. He didn't know what happened to him, but one thing was clear. An unbelievable miracle had come to him. Bellin Treatment Center. This was the clinic where Raymond was learning as an apprentice, and it was one of the most prestigious clinics in the kingdom's capital. However, the people in the clinic did not look at Raymond favorably at all. What is that pathetic bastard still doing here? Right. He doesn't even know what the theme is. How long does he plan to stay in the treatment center? Coming from a filthy illegitimate child background, the worst talent, not even in F grade, he was a miserable pathetic man despised by everyone. Shh. Be careful. What are you going to do if he hears that you're talking behind his back? So what? He's an illegitimate child anyway. Normally, Raymond would have given in to that snide remark, but not as much as he did today. Because he was distracted by other things. Suddenly, he heard a voice throwing a tantrum. Hey, Raymond. Chief Healer Lance is calling. Pardon? Oh, you're clumsy and slow. You were born short and now you've eaten your ear off. Hurry up and go. Raymond rushed to Chief Healer Lance's office. Welcome, Senior. A young-looking healer greeted him. Greetings to the Chief Healer. Raymond bowed down and greeted. It's been 5 years since you became an apprentice, right, Senior? Raymond's chest heaved. Yes, that's right. Today I formally spoke with the other healers. It seems that the Bellin Healing Center is finding it difficult to take care of Senior any longer. I want you to quit your apprenticeship and leave the clinic, because with Senior's pathetic talent, becoming a healer seems like an eternal impossibility. Lance said coldly in a voice full of derision. I am revoking Senior's apprenticeship effective this date. Since you are not qualified to be a healer, please pack up and leave the clinic. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.
The young man does not understand what he should do now. Working as a healer is the most worthy job of all those that an illegitimate child can claim. If he leaves the hospital, he will never be able to claim the title of healer again. Suddenly, an information window appears in front of the hero which says that he can treat people with surgery. Then a great idea appears in Layman's head that there is an opportunity to stay in the hospital. The hero shouts to the main healer that he will prove that he can also heal people. He asks to entrust him with a patient whom he can cure. Surely his healing skills are below F rank. But with his knowledge of medicine in his head, he will be able to become a healer. Healer Langs does not believe his words. He thinks that the hero believes that treating patients is akin to a child's game. However, he says that they just have a patient who may be suitable for the hero. If he copes and successfully cures the patient, then he will not be kicked out of the clinic. After a while, the hero comes to Rankin Street. He squeezes the documents and moves to the house of his first patient, and he is also very nervous because he has never treated people before. He understands that if he fails, he will be kicked out of the hospital, which means that he will lose the chance to pass the exam for the title of a real healer. Otherwise, he will become a healer without a diploma who will not be recognized for the rest of his life, and then he will go to prison if someone reports his illegal work. Thus, there will be more vile rumors that he is an illegitimate child and even a convicted one. The hero's father will be dragged into these rumors again, saying that it is not known how much longer he will disgrace this great man. The door opens abruptly in front of the hero and he falls, scattering all the documents he has on the patient. A girl came out to him and asked who he was. But when she saw the healer's coat of arms on his scattered papers, she immediately ran to him with tears in her eyes. Suddenly, a woman came out of the house and the girl joyfully started shouting to her that a healer from the Bellin Clinic had arrived. The woman can't believe her eyes that a healer has finally come to them. But the young man says that he is not a real healer. He is just a beginner. Then the woman replied that she doesn't care who he is because the main thing is to save her husband. At the clinic, they were told that they did not have enough funds to pay for expensive treatment, so she was refused and told that they would do nothing, and all she and her daughter could do now was watch her husband die. The hero examines the papers he has on the patient, and there it is indicated that he has a lesion of the gluteal zone. A man is sick with a serious illness called an abscess, which is a serious illness and a healer of at least B rank is needed to eliminate it. Of course, the poor family has nowhere to take money to pay for such a high-level healer, and now the man's family is forced to watch him die without the opportunity to help him. Here, the hero realizes that this situation is similar to his when he was still young. One day, he came to the clinic and asked for help. With all his might, he begged for it and said that he would earn not enough money because he only needed his mother to be cured. The cry of a little girl who asks to save her father pulls out of his thoughts. The hero pulls himself together and asks to show the patient. Suddenly, a system window appears in front which says that the hero decided to help the needy free of charge, so an additional bonus in the form of 5 skill points became available to him. The hero can get points from me by completing various tasks that the system will give, and he will be able to use these points to gain the skills necessary to treat patients. Suddenly, a golden system window appears which says about the beginning of a new task. The essence of it is that Layman must cure his first patient. The young man, after reading the last sentence, adjusts to the fact that now there will be a moment when he will be able to cure his first patient. And even if he came here so that he would not be kicked out of the clinic, but he must do everything he can to help the needy. The hero is sure that it is possible to cope because he has the necessary skills in the field of medicine to prevent serious diseases. Despite his lack of knowledge, he will be able to increase his experience by treating patients. If he treats patients, he will become an outstanding healer and gain the recognition of others. He approaches the patient who is bedridden and greets him. He suddenly feels a terrifying smell emanating from the man. Suddenly, the hero forgets what to do when meeting a patient, so he is very worried. Unexpectedly, the skill Steel Heart is activated, thanks to which the hero calms down. He asks the woman to show what is bothering the patient. She says that he has some kind of abscess on his buttocks, and instead of decreasing, it only increases every day. He also started to have a fever, and now he can't even get out of bed. The hero understands that he needs to act quickly, so first he checks his blood pressure, respiratory rate, and heart rate. Fortunately, sepsis, that is a purulent infection, has not yet begun, but we need to hurry because if the hero tries, then the patient can be saved. He says that now he needs to examine the painful place, then the woman turns her husband over and the hero sees the abscess. Using healing for such a case is extremely troublesome, but from a medical point of view, it is the most common disease. The woman asks the hero if it is possible to cure her husband because the clinic said that only a high-ranking healer can cope with such a disease. But Layman says that it is possible to cure the patient. He asks for help from a woman. He needs to boil water and then cool it down well. He also asks to prepare a sharp knife, and this phrase scares the woman very much. After the hero said that he still needed to be treated with fire, the woman asked how he was going to treat the patient. The young man replies that he is going to perform surgery. All preparations are completed and the hero is going to cut the tumor. Here the woman, frightened for her husband, grabs the young man by the hand because she does not understand why he is going to cut him. The young man replies that he is going to cure him. The woman does not understand why because healers should use healing. Layman says he will definitely save the man. He just needs to be trusted and he will be able to laugh with their daughter again. The woman lets go of the hero's hand and begins to pray. He is sure that he should not make a mistake. The hero recalls the operation where he was with a cold head but a passionate heart. In general medical knowledge, this is the way of thinking that a real surgeon should have. With the knowledge in the field of surgery that the hero has, the operation to remove the abscess is so simple that it is difficult to name both it and the operation. He carefully brings the knife and begins to cut the painful place, letting the pus flow out. He begins to write. The girl who is standing next to him screams, worrying about her father. Layman tries to collect his thoughts using his knowledge. First, he used a clean cloth to remove the leaking pus, and then he washed the abscess with boiled sterile water and removed the remaining pus. He also uses a knife to cut off all the dead tissue from the man's body. The operation is finally completed. The part with pus has been removed. The operation is completed by treating the wound, and then Layman uses a potion made from herbs and has natural antibiotic properties. Everything is complete. The woman approaches and asks if everything went well, to which the young man replies that everything ended well, and he asks to look after the patient. After a while, the man opens his eyes. The hero undertakes to check his temperature, and she is completely asleep. The woman thanks the hero but does not know how to express her gratitude even more. Layman replies that he just did what he had to. However, according to the woman, he was the only one who agreed to help. She says that she has been to many clinics. But all the healers said that her family's money would not even be enough to look at the patient, and thanks to the hero, she did not lose her husband and now her family is saved. Suddenly the girl runs to the young man and hugs him. Then he realizes that no one has ever said words of gratitude to him. It must be that the feeling he is experiencing now is joy after treating the patient. A few hours later, the hero stands in the office of the chief healer Langs and tells him that he was able to cure the patient. However, the healer does not believe him because an abscess is not a disease that can be cured by someone who is not even a B-rank healer. Healing is not an omnipotent force that cures all kinds of diseases just by putting your hand on the patient. In Liapontine, healing only increases vital energy, and vital energy gives several useful healing effects against some diseases, but it is completely useless against most of them. For purulent inflammation, which was treated by the hero, the healing force was no good and it would not have helped the patient in any way because no matter how much you increase the effectiveness, healing will be completely useless if pus is not removed inside the abscess and not only in the pus business. There will be too many problems with the Liapontine style of treatment. They don't even use this method properly because of their excessive dependence on healing. Lang says that he will go to find out everything personally. And if the hero lied, then he should be ready to pay for the lie. Calming himself, the young man was not afraid because he had done nothing wrong. Suddenly, a notification box appears in front of him indicating that he has completed the task and received ords, as well as his level has been raised and he has earned 10 skill points. Increasing the level occurs by gaining the required number of experience points. Thus, the hero increases his level, and as he increases, he can increase his characteristics. Once he reaches level 40, he will be able to raise his rank. The rank of the hero increases as the level increases, and from a novice resident, he can rise to a trained resident. Based on this, so far, the hero is a resident, but in the future, he will raise the level and become a specialist and then a professor. He understands that he will be able to level up in this way and then he gets additional performance points for each new level. Layman reads about additional characteristics that he can study. For example, endurance is an ability that includes general physical characteristics such as agility, muscle mass, and so on. Then endurance will be extremely useful in the treatment of patients, and there is also perception here. Perception is an ability that allows you to cunningly control the physical body. And the more sensitive the hero is, the more smoothly he will be able to perform delicate movements when treating a patient. Intelligence is used to allow the hero to rationally use the available knowledge. There is also an additional characteristic, the name of which is hidden by question marks, and it will be available after certain requirements are met. Suddenly, Langs burst into the room. He had already managed to check on a patient who had recently been treated by Layman, but the healer decided that it was not the hero himself who cured him. Apparently, the patient was cured on his own. However, a promise is a promise, and the man agrees to give the hero a chance. After a while, they come to the medical aid station. Lang says he gives the hero 15 days to prove himself at this point, but this time he will not be able to count on his luck. To raise the level, Layman needs to take care of patients, so it's good that he came here since this is the closest place to the emergency department where he could apply his medical knowledge. However, there is one problem, which is that all the healers around him hate him. Everyone blamed him for having healing abilities below F rank, so no one wanted such an inept healer to walk around the medical aid station. Layman understands that in this place, he will not be given the opportunity to take care of the sick. But if he does not cure anyone in these 15 days, then the training in the hospital will be over, so the young man understands that he must do something. Next patient. Instead of waiting for the apple to fall from the tree, he discovers a guy named Hansen who was a student at the hospital. About such students, they usually say neither fish nor meat. The hero approaches the young man and asks if he is tired. Next to the hero, Hansen was just as uncomfortable as next to others, but at least he is the kindest among the students at the first aid station. Layman turns to him and says that it seems to him that the young man is very busy, so he asks for permission to do cleaning at the emergency room. He doesn't like hanging around while Hansen is working. The hero says that he will take care of patients if there are no healers nearby. For example, he will bandage them or apply medicinal herbs to them. Hansen understands that the older comrades will be angry if they find out that he allowed Layman to treat patients. However, the hero says that healers sit in their offices most of the time and come out only when new patients arrive, but now there will be no patients, so no one will know. Hansen doesn't want to agree, so the hero gets upset and asks to pretend that nothing happened. Cleaning the point is the most difficult, so if there is no such obligation on your shoulders, then it will be much easier to work. Still, Hansen agrees. While the senior healer was not seen, Layman was treating people, increasing his experience. Since the tasks were very simple, the hero received only 1 experience point each, but he does not get upset. It's been 3 days since he started working at the first aid station and has already reached level 4. Layman decides to spend his extra points on perception because the faster his senses are, the more good a surgeon he will become. He believes that if he continues to accumulate experience, one day he will become the best healer in the world and will bathe in luxury. The hero dreams of living in a 5-story mansion with marble floors and eating juicy steaks, as well as drinking the highest quality wine before going to bed. He will never again find himself in a deplorable situation due to lack of money, nor will he tolerate treatment worse than the lowest of the servants. Despite the fact that he was born into a noble family, he always had to hide in corners, living in the most luxurious place, and only have the opportunity to envy others. One of his regular patients was an elderly woman. She said that the hero is very handsome and kind, and also said that she has seen many healers in her lifetime, but the hero is the sweetest of all those she has seen. Lamont says that, of course, he should be nice because it's so upsetting when you're sick and they treat you badly. He experienced it when his mom was sick. The woman says that she was once treated by a healer, and it seems his name was Langs. He was skilled, but with this terrible evil so much that the woman's well-being deteriorated again. When she left, an information window appeared in front of the hero which informs that he was very nice to the patient, so he received the achievement Good Healer, and also his reputation was increased. He also received 5 skill points as a reward. These glasses are needed to obtain and improve the skills of a surgeon. Finally, the working day is over and now there is only cleaning left. The hero had no desire to do this, but he promised Hansen. Lament even wondered if he should make an effort at all if no one was watching this place. In Liechtenstein, they don't pay too much attention to cleanliness, so it doesn't look like Hansen tried so hard to keep order. However, slapping himself on the cheek, the hero puts his thoughts in order because dirt harms patience, and frequency is the basic rule, so he must endure even if it's hard and finally get out. He motivates himself with what he needs just to imagine his future luxurious life to cheer up, namely beefsteaks every day. Finally, everything was tidied up. The heroes decide that when he becomes successful in the future, he will definitely hire cleaners because now his whole body hurts, and he even thought to increase his stamina. A system window popped up which stated that the hero had cleaned up at first aid station and also received an achievement, an improvement, 10 skill points, and bonus points for excellent work. Now he has access to the purchase of skills in the store where a special offer is valid for the first purchase. For 40 points, he can buy a skill of a unique rank. He is given a choice of 3 skills: Iron Man Strength, Dexterous Hands, and Sage Thighs. The hero wants to choose everything, but you can only choose one. Suddenly, healers burst into the emergency room. An emergency case was received where the patient vomited blood. Layman understands that if he vomits blood, then it is very bad and a healer of at least a rank is needed here. Healing is a force that stimulates vital energy, and stimulation of vital energy activates coagulation, but in situations where bleeding is abundant, the effectiveness of such an action decreases. At the Ballon Clinic, only Director Bucks has a rank skills. There are also several B ranks here, but at this rate, the patient will die. There is a technique for performing surgery on such patients, but Layman cannot perform it because he is only a novice resident, so here you need the title of an experienced resident. Here, the main healer, Langs, comes to the patient who examines him. Director Bex is currently out of town to cure a nobleman. The patient started vomiting blood again, and by chance, drops of blood fell on Lang's hand. He says with disgust that he can't do anything, so the patients must be sent back. After hearing this, the hero wants to try to save him. The healer says that healing is useless here, but Layman still tries to persuade him to let him try. Langs replies that since the hero is so worried about this person, why not try to cure him on his own? However, the probability of failure is too high. And if something happens to the patient, the hero will be blamed and he will also be expelled from the clinic. A system window appears that informs that an unforeseen quest has begun, the essence of which is to become a caring healer and cure the patient with the help of willpower, despite the low level of skill. So far, the hero has held on with all his hands and feet, so if something goes wrong, then everything will be over for him. He looks at a patient who, dying, asks for help. Layman can't do anything because it's not in his power, but if no one helps, then the man will just die. The hero understands that he needs to think rationally. That is, even if he tries, nothing will come out, so it would be wiser to just continue to take care of less seriously ill people and in the future find another opportunity to gain experience. Suddenly, the steel heart skill is activated and Layman begins to possess steel determination and a firm will. He recalls the Hippocratic Oath, which states that the swearing asks to be allowed to practice medicine and solemnly swears to devote his life to the service of humanity. Even if it is akin to the impossible, he cannot abandon a dying person. Layman asks to be allowed to try to cure this patient. Langs is sure that the hero just went crazy, but still allows him. However, he clarifies so that the hero does not forget to take responsibility for the result later. Other healers leave and the hero remains alone. He is not sure that he will be able to cope alone because it is quite difficult to carry out the operation alone. When suddenly Hansen calls out to him, who offers the young man his help because he also wants this man not to die. The hero feels relieved because now he has an assistant, so he thanks Hansen for his support and help. The situation is urgent, so there is no time to explain. Layman tells his assistant that you need to prepare a knife boiled in sterile clean water to begin with and then treat it with fire. He also needs a thin thread and disinfect it with medicinal herbs. Hansen doesn't understand why all these things are needed. With the help of a hallucinogen, the hero put the patient to sleep and anesthetized him. Fortunately, he also prepared catgut, that is, a natural absorbable surgical suture material. Blamond had prepared it in advance just in case because it was easy to get since it is used by magicians from the wizard tower. First, you need to disinfect the place on the body where the surgery will be performed. Here the young man begins to cut his skin tissue with a knife, and this scares Hansen very much. Heroes see fat and muscles covered in blood. He knew how to open the abdominal cavity from the knowledge he had gained. However, it was terrible to see it with his own eyes, and as a result, the young man's head empties. The hero begins to shake, but suddenly the skill steel heart is activated, which allows the young man to become more adamant. Layman thinks about wealth, male, and calms down. He just needs to follow the knowledge of surgery. He must perform a median laparotomy. That is a method of surgical intervention by dissecting the tissues in the area of the anterior abdominal wall. Hansen is just terrified because he doesn't understand what the heroes are doing to the patient and should he stop him. However, he sees the confident look of the hero and does not risk stopping him. Yellow fluid oozes from the duodenum. This is a perforated ulcer, so it is necessary to bind the artery and block the hole. A perforated ulcer is a through defect in the wall of the stomach and duodenum, as in this case with access to the abdominal cavity or retroperitoneal space. Here, the hero asks Hansen to lift one red organ. The young man is surprised but still helps the hero. Now you need to cut out the perforation area with a scalpel. The hands of the young man do not obey at all. And at this rate, the operation will end very badly, so the hero decides to buy the skill-dexterous hands of the surgeon. Good stamina and intelligence are undoubtedly important, but more importantly, they are able to save the patient. He uses the skill and his perception increases from 6 to 16 and the fingertips become more substantial. Of course, it's still a little unusual, but the hero moves gracefully really and the feeling that he lacks something. He asks Hansen for a threat because first he needs to tie the artery and stop the bleeding. Now you need to close the hole in the duodenum. Then you need to take the tongue of the momentum of a suitable size and block the perforation of the intestine with it, applying nodal sutures. And finally, it remains only to check the vagus nerve, which is associated with the secretion of gastric acid, and also remove the spread gastric juice with clean water, and finally, do not sew it up. The operation is over. The hero got his first experience in abdominal surgery. He received the achievement of the father surgeon, that is, the discoverer of surgery for future generations. The hero also received a lot of skill points and a bonus to level up. Suddenly, his legs give way and he falls and tears begin to flow from his eyes. Finally, he did it, cured the patient. After a while, the chief healer learns that Layman did a good job and cured a patient who vomited blood. He couldn't believe his ears because it's impossible, so he decides to make sure of everything personally. Legs give way and he falls and tears begin to flow from his eyes. Finally, he did it, cured the patient. After a while, the chief healer learns that Layman did a good job and cured a patient who vomited blood. He couldn't believe his ears because it's impossible, so he decides to make sure of everything personally. Langs believes that there is no way the hero can heal patients with blood vomiting and his abilities are below F rank. He bursts into the room and sees how the patient is having fun and sweetly communicating with his healer. The man thanks the main character for the rescue. The young man answers him that he should not forget about caution. Langs comes into the room and asks who cured the patient, or perhaps Director Bucks did it at all. The healer still does not believe him because he thinks that he is lying since he does not reach the F rank, so how could he cure a sick person here? The young man replies that he did not use healing. However, he understands that the truth cannot be told. He invents a legend that he treats patients with the help of medical techniques that were used in ancient times. Yes, it was for such a case that the hero came up with a story. Layman says that some time ago when he was running errands in the northern region he lost his balance and fell off a cliff unexpectedly for himself and then wandered into the ancient ruins and there was able to comprehend the ancient method of healing, which is called medical techniques. Langs doesn't believe him. Suddenly the patient gets out of bed and says that it's too noisy here. He calls the main healer and lifts up his shirt and then asks to see him, which has proof that it was the main character who saved him. There was a huge seam on his stomach, by the way. The man adds that he remembered the main healer because it was he who asked people to leave him to die. The main healer did not help himself, and now he is trying to denigrate either the healer who pulled the man out of the other world. He takes a chamber pot and throws it right at the main healer, dousing him from head to toe. The patient is very angry. He shouts at him, insulting him, and asks him to get out of here right now. The main healer runs away. The patient apologizes to the main character for soiling the room. However, the young man replies that, thanks to him, he feels better. At this time, Langs is trying to understand the words of the young man, namely that he was talking about some secret ancient techniques. People started discussing the main character saying that he was lucky to stop the bleeding. The hero knew that people's opinion about him would not change just because he cured one patient. Here, Hansen turns to the hero. The young man does not say anything and takes away Lamont's mop. That from now on, he will be engaged in cleaning because this is his job. It seemed to the hero that Hansen looked at him differently. Behind the wall was Langs, who looked at the hero quite differently. His gaze started from mocking to a complete desire to kill. In the past, when people behaved this way towards heroes, he didn't know what to do, but now he doesn't care. Everyone should keep watching. And when he eventually becomes the best healer, then everyone will dance with him. Hear the main healer Langs. The hero sneaks up from behind and talks about his skills. He offers him to go to the birthday festival at the royal palace as an invited healer. This shocks the hero. The festival is organized in honor of the birthday. This banquet is also dedicated to the birthday of the very first king, a grandiose festival at which all the capital's nobility gather. It is so large-scale that there are not enough healers at the royal palace because each clinic sends its own people there. Being sent to the festival at the royal palace means that your abilities have been recognized, and it is a great honor for any healer. However, the hero does not like it. The chief healer, Lang, says that Lamond is still a student and only the really hopeful gets such a chance. And the hero cured a patient who vomited blood, so he definitely deserved the right to participate. The hero believes that Langs does not give them the opportunity but just wants to set them up because for the hero, the royal palace is hell. The fact is that he has 3 stepbrothers who constantly bullied him. That time was like hell. If we compare life in the palace and life in the clinic, then the latter will definitely seem like paradise because it was because of the hero that his father's dignity was tarnished. He was a hidden prince. The Kingdom of Houston is a country where chivalry and nobility prevail, so it does not recognize illegitimate children. The hero, the only mistake that the king of a great country once made. Therefore, he is bad because he should not exist because he defames the name of his royal majesty. The heroes decide to clarify whether it is really necessary to send him to the festival. Lang says that if he does not like it, then let him not go. Only the hero should not forget that the completion of his training is in the hands of the main healer. Layman really wants to hit him, but he can't do it. Suddenly, an information window appears in front of him with a new task which is called the Guardian of the Banquet. The essence of this task is that a large number of people gather at the banquet and it is unknown what kind of emergency situation may occur. The task of the hero, as a healer, is to make the banquet without victims. The hero notices that the reward for this task is very great. However, he is worried about the high complexity because, most likely, some very serious urgent incident or something is going to happen. Layman agrees to go. He asks Langs to promise that he will give him permission to take an official qualified exam for a healer at the end of the banquet. Even if everyone present at the clinic behaves ridiculously unfairly, the only reason why the hero still remains at the Bellin clinic is the desire to take the qualification exam for a healer. He can't go to the palace without asking for something in return. A few days later came the royal festival. 5 years ago, the hero left the royal palace and here he is again. He's thinking about going back to the Bellanda clinic. He doesn't understand how he can help an urgent patient at all when his healing powers are below F rank. There will be a lot of skilled healers at the banquet. However, if healing is useless for this person, then he may die. The young man understands that he should not avoid the palace because he has done nothing wrong. He didn't want to be born out of wedlock, so it's the fault of his father, the king, and the hero is just a victim. As a result, an information window appears again which says that the hero decided to look fear in the eye, so Steelheart reacted to his concern. He calms down. Lamond understands that he should not be discouraged because who knows, he may be able to save a high-ranking nobleman and he will receive a generous reward. However, before entering the castle, the hero must acquire useful skills. He looks at the profile menu which states that for skill points, he can acquire any skill he wants. However, due to his low F rank class, there are some restrictions, so the skills available for purchase are divided into 2 groups, attribute skills which can be purchased 5 pieces and passive skills which can be purchased 3 pieces. The hero decides to look at the attribute skills available for purchase and he sees several types of basic magic, which means he can learn magic for points. He decides to buy a skill called the Method of Dealing with Jerks because there are a lot of them among the noble people. After a while, the banquet begins. People raise their glasses to His Royal Majesty, to the king, because no one can compare with the greatness of His Majesty. Thanks to this man, the Kingdom of Houston has become so developed. He was an outstanding knight and military commander as well as a politician who thinks about his people. He was a monarch who listened to the nobility and no one dared to mock the king. That's why all the people spoke badly about the hero, because if it wasn't for him, the king would have been just perfect. The banquet also discussed the main character, calling him the hidden prince who left the castle 5 years ago. There was a lot of gossip about him, but right now he was standing in a group of healers. Suddenly one of the people notices a young man in the corner who looked like a hidden prince. The hero rejoices in his steel heart because before he would have been simply discouraged catching such glances on himself, but today he does not care about anything. He thinks that today he shines like never before. Suddenly the hero notices Princess Sophia. The girl had a look as if she was looking at a mistake that has not been fixed yet. However, if you compare this girl with the main princess, then she is just a dissatisfied teenage girl. She did not mock the hero because she simply did not have the strength to do so because, like the first queen, her health was not good. Even now, her complexion is still pale, so the hero thinks that she is still not cured. Suddenly, he hears a voice from the side. A red-haired young man, who was the fourth prince named Saddle, approaches him. As a child, the young man often beat the main character. And after this cruel childhood, his scars on his body still have not healed. He still can't move like a mouse in front of a snake. Saddle is very angry because Layman dares to ignore him. The hero was very scared at the sight of his brother. The steel hard skill is reactivated and he is no longer afraid of anything because his will is firm again. Saddle is designated as an extremely high complexity jerk. The skill method of dealing with jerks is activated. Suddenly, the hero makes a bow and greets the great fourth prince of the Houston Kingdom. The young man is surprised because the main character does not look scared, although he used to be so afraid that he could not say a word. Lament is trying to somehow play this situation by asking what brought the fourth prince here because this is a zone for healers and if he came here, it means he feels bad. Saddle doesn't understand what's wrong with the hero. He says he feels fine. The hero tries to send off the fourth prince as he feels well, so he sends him to the other side where the banquet is located. Suddenly, he sees a man who is crouched down and tries to help him, ignoring the fourth prince. The hero again turns to Saddle, hinting that he would leave faster. Saddle tries to humiliate the hero somehow, saying that he really feels bad, so he is in the zone for healers. He says that he has been feeling tired lately and he has no strength at all. Since healers believe that such big symptoms are the most difficult to deal with, he decides to check how the hero copes. The young man, after examining the fourth prince, concludes that he is suffering from alcohol poisoning. It turns out that the fourth prince drank every day. Excessive amounts of alcohol can cause a functional disorder of the body. Therefore, most likely, this is the cause of fatigue, His Highness, the fourth prince. The hero advises him to refrain from drinking alcoholic beverages and have a good rest. Saddle gets upset and leaves in a bad mood.
With a calm smile on his face, Raymond respectfully asked Prince Saddle to take care of his health. The prince, standing tall in his regal attire, could only nod, unable to refuse as Raymond showered him with sincere compliments. As Raymond inquired if the prince had any other health issues, the prince simply shook his head, giving a brief and final no. Raymond wished him a good time at the banquet, his voice filled with pleasant courtesy. But deep inside, Raymond was overjoyed. He had successfully dealt with the villain, the one man he had feared. Saddle was puzzled. Why was Raymond behaving like this? Why wasn't he trembling in fear like he used to? Before, Raymond would have been too scared to even speak in the prince's presence, let alone joke around. But today he felt victorious. Raymond knew why. He had made the right decision when he bought that special skill. Without it, he would never have been able to face the prince so boldly. As he glanced at the prince, a thought crossed his mind. This man is no threat at all. For the first time in a long while, Raymond felt completely at ease. He even started bantering with the prince, making light jokes that subtly poked fun at the man who once made his life difficult. This playful exchange caught the attention of Princess Sophia, who quietly approached. Raymond turned abruptly, startled by her sudden appearance. In an instant, Raymond bowed deeply, his hand placed firmly on his chest in a gesture of respect. But the princess was not amused. Her gaze, sharp and unwavering, reflected the shock of what she had overheard. She had listened to every word of Raymond's conversation with the prince, and she wasn't about to let it go unnoticed. "You've changed a lot in these last 5 years, Raymond," she remarked coldly, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. She didn't stop there. Her next word stung. "You used to be worthless. Like garbage." Raymond, taken aback, blinked in confusion. Was that supposed to be an insult? He couldn't tell. After a brief pause, he replied with a straight face, "You haven't changed at all." That remark hit Princess Sophia harder than he realized. Her expression shifted ever so slightly, betraying the hurt behind her otherwise stoic facade. She had hoped she was no longer seen as the horrible person she once was, but Raymond's words felt like confirmation that nothing had changed. Noticing her discomfort, Raymond quickly tried to reassure her, softly complimenting her beauty, hoping to end the conversation on a more positive note. But Sophia seemed eager to leave. She claimed she wasn't feeling well, her voice strained and distant. Raymond's instincts as a healer kicked in immediately. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern lacing his tone. But the princess brushed him off, waving away his questions. He knew she was unwell, her pale face betraying her words. As Princess Sophia turned away, her two maids hurried to follow her, their anxious eyes darting between Raymond and their princess. Though she was rude and quick to anger, Sophia was a true princess in every sense. She took her place on the throne at the head of the banquet hall, a picture of grace and power. The room erupted into cheers as the banquet officially began. Princess Sophia rose to give her speech, her voice clear and authoritative as she welcomed everyone to the celebration. She spoke with confidence, congratulating the gathered nobles on this joyous occasion. But as her speech continued, Raymond, standing among the crowd, noticed something was wrong. The princess's movements became sluggish. Her face grew paler and her once strong voice began to falter. Raymond's heart raced as he watched her closely. Sweat glistened on her forehead, her hand clutching her chest as if the very act of breathing had become a struggle. The crowd seemed oblivious, but Raymond sensed the danger. And then, in the middle of her speech, it happened. Princess Sophia staggered, her legs giving out beneath her as she collapsed to the ground. A wave of panic swept through the banquet hall. Screams filled the air as nobles rushed forward, trying to help, but Princess Sophia lay unconscious, her face devoid of life. A group of men shouted for a healer, their voices tinged with fear. The older nobles hurried toward the fallen princess, their faces grim, while others stood frozen in shock. The atmosphere was chaotic, but Raymond remained still, his mind racing. The healers arrived in an instant, and one young healer, a boy barely out of his teens, stepped forward. He placed his hands over the princess, green healing magic swirling in the air. But to everyone's horror, it didn't work. The magic flickered, but the princess's condition didn't improve. The healer's face paled, his eyes wide with fear. He stepped back, shaking his head in disbelief. Even the best magic couldn't save her. Raymond watched from the sidelines, his thoughts a whirlwind. Should he step in? Could he risk it? As an apprentice, he wasn't supposed to interfere. But if he did nothing, Princess Sophia would die. She hadn't apologized to him yet, not properly. He couldn't let her die without making her apologize for all the torment she had caused him. With a newfound determination, Raymond stepped forward, his voice loud and unwavering. "I'll treat her myself," he declared. The healers, startled, turned to him in disbelief. The lead healer, Ing, tried to stop him. "What are you doing? Get out of here," he shouted, but Raymond refused to back down. "Time is running out," Raymond yelled, his voice cutting through the noise of the crowd. He pushed past the healers, his nonchalant expression masking the fear and pressure building inside him. He approached Princess Sophia, kneeling beside her motionless body. The room fell into a tense silence as Raymond began checking for a pulse. His hands shook slightly as he felt her neck. Nothing. No pulse. Her heart had stopped. Healing magic wouldn't help now. Without hesitation, Raymond began chest compressions, his movements quick and precise. The nobles shouted angrily, accusing him of harming the princess. But Raymond ignored them, focusing solely on saving her life. Sweat dripped down his face as he continued, his arms burning with effort. The room erupted into chaos, but Raymond remained focused. Suddenly the king arrives there and stares at the situation, and asks the healers can they save Sophia. All healers stayed silent with a sorry face. After seeing that, the king commands the guards to let Raymond try. Raymond continues to give chest compressions to the princess, but her heart won't start beating. Raymond realizes that if this keeps up she'll die. Nobility will imply that he is the one who killed the princess. Suddenly, he had an idea. His mind raced back to the blue screen, the skill menu. If healing magic couldn't work, maybe something else would. In a flash, he accessed the blue window and scrolled through the options. His fingers hovered over a selection: basic lightning magic. It was risky, but it was his only chance. With a quick breath, Raymond made his choice. Raymond confidently applied his newly acquired skill, his movements precise. One hand slipped under the princess's right collarbone while the other rested beneath her left arm, near her armpit. He focused, and in an instant, blue sparks of electricity began to crackle around Princess Sophia's body. But just as Raymond began to hope, a royal guard leapt forward. She pushed Raymond to the ground, his body crashing into the floor with a heavy thud. The cold, sharp edge of her sword was at his throat before he could react. "What have you done to the princess?" she spat, her grip on the sword tightening. The tension in the air was thick as the other guards surrounded Raymond, ready to strike him down where he knelt. The room had grown still. Raymond raised his hands in surrender, his voice calm but urgent. "I wasn't attacking her. I was trying to save her life." His plea was met with skeptical glares. The king ordered the healers to examine Princess Sophia. The highest-ranking healers rushed forward, their robes brushing the floor as they gathered around the princess's still form. Healer Aang, trembling with uncertainty, placed his fingers on Sophia's artery, feeling for a pulse. His eyes widened, and he gasped in disbelief as he felt the faint but unmistakable thump of her heartbeat. The princess, her heart, it's beating again. Aang's voice broke through the tense silence, and whispers of astonishment rippled through the crowd like wildfire. "This is incredible." Raymond remained on the ground, still at sword point, but a wave of relief washed over him. He exhaled deeply, his eyes closing for a brief moment. It had worked. Against all odds, he had saved her. The king, his regal figure towering over the crowd, approached Raymond slowly, his expression unreadable. The crowd parted in hushed awe as the king stopped in front of the young man who had just performed the impossible. The king asked, "What did you do?" Raymond, still kneeling, replied carefully, his voice steady, "Healing wouldn't have worked, Your Majesty. I used another method, a technique I learned long ago." The king's brows furrowed, his arms crossing in front of him. The silence stretched as Raymond's words hung in the air. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the king sighed deeply, turning to address the hall. "The banquet is over," he announced, his voice carrying throughout the room. "We are done here." As he began to walk away, the king suddenly paused. "Wait until I summon you," he said, his voice unexpectedly soft, and then he was gone. Raymond blinked in confusion. He had not expected those words from the king, words that carried neither anger nor dismissal. For the first time in his life, Raymond felt seen by his father. Raymond's mind wandered back. He had been just a child, weak, frail, and starving, alone in the slums after his mother had died. He could still remember the moment the king had found him, his body so malnourished that it barely seemed alive. The king had picked him up in his arms, his face unreadable as he silently carried Raymond back to the palace. It was the only time his father had ever shown him any warmth. From that day on, Raymond had lived in the palace, surrounded by people who blame him for tarnishing the image of the king by being an illegitimate child. All his siblings used to bully him, and everyone treat him worse than slave. But his father had never spoken to him again, until now. As Raymond stood in the now empty banquet hall, a blue screen flashed before his eyes. It was a notification: quest completed. 30 skill points earned. He grinned, his chest swelling with pride. Not only had he saved Princess Sophia, but he had also completed the quest and earned a significant reward. His reputation had grown, and his skill set had expanded. He stood a little taller, his head held high, feeling a sense of victory that he had never felt before. The time had come to claim his reward. Raymond was summoned to the king's throne room, the path lined with noblemen on both sides. Their eyes followed him as he walked, their murmurs filled with curiosity and surprise. Raymond approached the throne, where his father stood, the regal figure looming over him. He bowed deeply, introducing himself as a servant to His Majesty. The king narrowed his eyes, his gaze intense. "What method did you use to save my daughter?" Raymond took a deep breath, carefully crafting his response. "It was an ancient secret technique, Your Majesty," he explained. "One I discovered while wandering the ruins long ago." He spoke of the ancient ruins and the mysterious powers they held, weaving a tale of forgotten techniques that were unlike traditional healing methods. The king's right-hand man, standing nearby, hesitated for a moment, but eventually, he believed Raymond's story. The king, though clearly not pleased, did not press further. "You saved the princess, you shall be rewarded." Raymond's heart raced as the king asked him what reward he desired. Wealth, jewels, a lifetime of luxury, anything was within his grasp. But Raymond wasn't interested in riches. He had a bigger goal in mind. "I am a healer," Raymond said, his voice firm. "What I desire is the ability to continue using my medical technique. I need your approval, Your Majesty." He realizes that if he continues to use them, the healers might accuse him of practicing sorcery, and the Tower of Healing could ban the technique altogether. To prevent this, Raymond knows he needs the king's official recognition. Without hesitation, the king agrees to his request and gives a formal speech acknowledging the technique as a legitimate form of treatment. Raymond is overjoyed. The king's approval is more than he could have hoped for. Yet, Raymond isn't entirely satisfied. He's only getting started and decides to make one more request. With eloquence, Raymond explains that he doesn't want gold or silver. All he desires is to be honored as a healer. The king, perhaps not understanding the gravity of the request, initially seems puzzled. Raymond, with a sorrowful look, asks for something that seems less substantial, the bearer's medal, if His Majesty would permit it. The king is visibly surprised by such an odd request from the young hidden prince, and the nobles whisper in shock. After all, the bearer's medal is awarded for extraordinary service to the empire, not something granted lightly. Everyone in the room is astonished. They had assumed Raymond was nothing more than a bastard, but now they see a generous, kind-hearted young man. Some think he is too simple-minded for a healer. Raymond's fame rises in the eyes of those around him, for his words move them deeply. But Raymond's intentions are far from naive. By receiving the bearer's medal, he earns honor and can elevate himself to nobility. It is the best possible outcome for him in this situation. The king, still surprised by the young man's humility, asks if the medal will truly be enough. Having ruled for years, no one had ever made such a request, as most seek wealth. Raymond assures the king that the medal will suffice. The nobles, astonished and delighted by Raymond's modesty, cheer. Raymond's reputation grows even more, and the king has no choice but to honor his request and bestow the bearer's medal upon him. Raymond bows before the king and expresses his gratitude. The festival ends, and the healers leave the royal palace. Raymond, immensely satisfied, could not have expected such a result. As the king watches Raymond leave through the window, he reflects on the young man. His right-hand man, Gelman, remarks how much Raymond has changed and that he is no longer just a child with basic desires. Gelman remembers the day he first encountered Raymond in the slums, a frail child on the brink of death. The king had made the decision to save him, even though the boy was illegitimate, and to give him a chance at life. Raymond's mother had left the palace after discovering the king's identity, choosing to leave quietly to protect his honor. Gelman continues to express his concerns that acknowledging Raymond might damage the king's reputation, but the king is resolute and leaves the room without discussing it further. Gelman reflects that, after the situation with the princess, it might have been better for Raymond to have been the illegitimate son of a commoner than to endure years of abuse in the palace. He had advised the king that Raymond, once mastering his technique, could achieve great things, despite the difficulties faced by illegitimate children. The king, mulling over Gelman's words, departs the room in haste, while Gelman is left feeling frustrated. Meanwhile, Raymond returns to the clinic where he is studying. Unsure of how his fellow students will react to his achievements, he walks in proudly, his head held high. His fame has already reached the clinic, and students swarm him with questions. Raymond relishes the attention, knowing that just a short time ago, they had viewed him as nothing more than trash. Even Langs, the chief healer, is now cautious of him. But Raymond hasn't forgotten Lang's promise of a qualifying exam. Langs, seething with anger, addresses Raymond with a Sir prefix, confirming that he is now eligible for the exam. Raymond, mocking Langs, repeats his name with the title, Sir, enjoying his newfound status as a nobleman. Furious, Langs begrudgingly apologizes for his improper tone and formally greets Raymond according to etiquette. The chief healer, though furious, is forced to bow before him. Raymond savors the moment, though he knows he cannot retaliate against those who once tormented him, for he lacks the authority and power to exact justice. He must be content with his current victories. Raymond focuses on gaining the respect of his fellow healers, working diligently and treating as many patients as he can. As his experience grows, so does his intelligence and skill. Even the patients begin to praise his humility and dedication. Hansen, another healer, starts observing Raymond closely, though it's unclear whether out of admiration or something else. One day, alarms ring out as a patient with a severe stomach wound arrives at the aid station. The healers gather around him, trying to treat his injuries. Raymond thinks to himself that a B-rank healer like Langs should be able to handle this case, but Langs just stands there, staring at the bloodied patient. Raymond is puzzled. Why isn't Langs doing anything? Though the patient is gravely injured, he had walked several meters on his own, losing a lot of blood in the process. He keeps muttering about leaked information and collapsing from exhaustion. Meanwhile, in Augusta County, a noble estate, a dark-haired young man speaks with Count Augustus about the hidden prince's deeds. The count, who had suspected Raymond of being untrustworthy at the banquet, acknowledges that Raymond is skilled but believes he will never become a prince. The count's family supports the third prince, Liberton, though it is more likely the second prince, Karen, will take the throne. The count hands a letter to Killian, instructing him to deliver it to the third prince, while cautioning him to avoid drawing attention from the second prince's watchful eyes. Everything happened so quickly. The attacker had likely been sent by the second prince, and though Killian barely fended him off, he lost a significant amount of blood. He somehow managed to stagger to the nearest clinic, nearly unconscious, but determined to survive. When the healers saw Killian, they were horrified and immediately sounded the alarm for an emergency. Despite being gravely wounded, Killian remained standing, pleading for the strength to save his life. The healers scrambled around him in a panic, urgently calling for Chief Healer Langs. Killian was confident he wouldn't die here. He believed they would save him. But to Killian's surprise, Chief Healer Langs showed no urgency. He simply stood by, observing. It quickly became clear why. Langs coldly declared that he had no intention of treating a beggar like Killian. He didn't want this man on the clinic's records, nor did he want to deal with him for days. Langs ordered that Killian be sent to another clinic, one meant for commoners. Killian, struggling to speak, tried to inform Langs that he was from the noble Augustus family, but he couldn't form the words, coughing up blood as he gasped for breath. Langs turned away with contempt, declaring that someone of Killian's low status couldn't possibly receive treatment in such a prestigious clinic. At that moment, Raymond stepped in, challenging Langs. He pointed out that no healer at the nearby clinic was qualified to treat such a serious case, and if they sent Killian away, he would die. Langs, mocking Raymond, sarcastically told him that if he wanted to treat Killian, he was welcome to try. With a smirk, Langs taunted Raymond, saying that if he had the skill to cure a princess, surely he could handle a beggar. The other disciples and healers whispered amongst themselves. Langs clearly didn't believe in Raymond, thinking his previous success was just a stroke of luck. The truth stung Raymond. His rank wasn't high enough to handle such a complex surgery. He hesitated, unsure of what to do. Langs, seizing the moment, ordered Raymond to either treat the patient or personally throw him out of the clinic. To drive the point home, he suggested that Raymond escort Killian to the commoner clinic himself. Anger burned inside Raymond at the injustice of dividing people into rich and poor when it came to something as crucial as healing. His goal was to become a skilled healer, and though he had ambitions of wealth, he believed that no healer should abandon a dying patient. With newfound determination, Raymond locked eyes with Langs and boldly declared that he would cure Killian. Activating his heart of steel, Raymond remained calm and composed, while Langs, confident of his failure, left Raymond alone with the patient. The others quickly dispersed, leaving Raymond to figure out how he would perform the surgery. Staring at Killian's weakened form, Raymond felt unsure of himself. He knew that if he failed, it could ruin everything for him. But before he could dwell on his fears, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Hansen, with fire in his eyes, offered to help. Raymond, thrilled but taken aback by Hansen's willingness, eagerly accepted. Grabbing Hansen's hand, he thanked him sincerely. Raymond assigned Hansen the same tasks as before: boil the water, sterilize the knife and needle. Together, they prepared for the difficult operation. Killian had lost too much blood, and a transfusion was necessary, but they didn't have the proper equipment for such a procedure. Raymond began to think through each step carefully. First, he injected some blood, then tried to stop the bleeding, activating his nimble surgeon's hands. Raymond moved with the precision of a seasoned doctor, while Hansen stood by, handing him the instruments. Slowly, Raymond made an incision in Killian's abdomen, his hands more steady than ever before. But something wasn't right. Blood was pouring out, more than expected. Hansen, terrified, asked if it was normal for there to be so much blood. Raymond didn't answer, frozen as he stared at the organ. Panic rising, Hansen shouted at Raymond, snapping him back to reality. Realizing he had forgotten Hansen's presence, Raymond instructed him to wipe away the blood with a sterile cloth. As Hansen carefully wiped the blood, Raymond inspected the organs, trying to locate the source of the excessive bleeding, wondering what he could use as a substitute. Sensing something was wrong, Hansen watched as Raymond weighed his options. Desperate, Raymond turned to his magical abilities. Opening the attribute screen, he selected fire magic. His heart raced with worry. Fire could burn the patient if he wasn't careful. The blue screen assured him that his intelligence was high enough to control the magic. Raymond felt relieved. He hadn't trained in these skills for nothing. With utmost caution, Raymond prepared for the cauterization. He raised his left hand and summoned a small fireball into his palm. Hansen, stunned by the sight, was speechless. It was pure magic, something he hadn't expected from Raymond. But Raymond focused, using the fire to carefully stop the bleeding. Afterward, he asked Hansen for a thread to stitch up the damaged veins. With his deft surgeon's hands activated, Raymond worked methodically, making suture after suture with ease. Hansen, in awe, watched as Raymond expertly finished the operation, placing each stitch as if he had been practicing for years. When the bleeding had completely stopped, Raymond smiled, relieved. Hansen, still shocked, asked Raymond about his ability to use magic. Raymond casually replied that magic was just a hobby, something he dabbled in during his free time. He explained that he had gained his magical abilities while exploring ancient ruins, which had since collapsed, meaning no one else could access them. Hansen realized that Raymond was only talking to deflect from telling the full truth. He respected Raymond's choice, knowing that anyone in his position would want to keep such powers secret. There wasn't much left to finish the surgery, just flushing everything out and repairing the mesentery. Hansen was in awe of Raymond's abilities. No matter what technique he used, Raymond was saving lives that others couldn't. Hansen even began to wonder if he could learn this technique himself. After a brief reflection, he concluded that Raymond would likely refuse to teach him. The surgery was finally complete, and Killian's life was no longer in danger. The blue screen in front of Raymond displayed a significant increase in experience, and his level had gone up. Hansen, seeing Raymond lost in thought, asked if the procedure was finished. A satisfied Raymond turned to him, grabbed his hands firmly, and began to thank him profusely for his assistance. He praised Hansen, emphasizing that he couldn't have saved the patient without him, just as he hadn't been able to do it alone the last time. Hansen was stunned by Raymond's words, feeling a mix of shyness and euphoria at the unexpected praise. Raymond was certainly an unusual young man. Soon after, Killian began to regain consciousness, much to the delight of the two healers. Still somewhat disoriented, Killian asked what clinic he was in. With a smile, Raymond and Hansen explained that due to the severity of his wounds, he had been treated at the Bellin Clinic. Killian mentioned the White Clinic, recalling that the chief healer wanted to send him there. Just then, Count Augustus burst into the room, shouting his son's name. The Count rushed to Killian's bedside, calling him son. Both Raymond and Hansen froze, realizing that the patient they thought was a beggar was actually the noble son of Count Augustus. Killian, now more alert, recognized his father and addressed him. The Count grasped his son's hand tightly, relieved that he had been treated at the Bellin Clinic, where the healers were highly skilled. He asked who had saved his son, assuming it must have been the director or Langs. Hansen, unable to contain his pride, stepped forward, his head held high, and declared that it was Sir Raymond who had saved Killian. Raymond stood by with a satisfied expression. Killian turned to Raymond in surprise, asking if he was the same Raymond who had saved the princess. Hansen and Raymond didn't hold anything back. They told the Count everything. Langs had ordered that Killian be sent to the White Clinic, refusing to treat him, but Raymond had intervened and taken on the risk to save his son. Count Augustus was clearly shocked. Killian, thinking back on his appearance, suggested that Langs had mistaken him for a beggar, which is why he was treated so poorly. The Count's face darkened with rage, and it looked as if he might explode at any moment. Chief Healer Langs was informed of Count Augustus's arrival and immediately leapt from his chair, his face lighting up with excitement. He pushed past everyone, eager to greet such a distinguished nobleman. Rushing into the clinic's aid station, Langs entered the room where the Count, Killian, Raymond, and Hansen were waiting. Breathless, Langs enthusiastically greeted Count Augustus, apologizing for not coming sooner and introducing himself as the chief healer of the Bellin Clinic. Langs didn't even notice anyone else in the room, his attention solely on the Count. But an uneasy silence filled the space as three grim faces, those of Raymond, Hansen, and the Count, gazed at him coldly. Count Augustus, in a calm yet menacing voice, asked if Langs was the same healer who had left his son for dead. Langs was visibly unprepared for this confrontation. He stood frozen, unable to respond. Then, gathering his wits, he tried to laugh it off, claiming that such a thing was absurd and that he would never have allowed it. Slowly, Count Augustus stepped aside, revealing his weakened son, Killian, glaring directly at Langs, stunned and speechless. Langs realized the beggar was the Count's son. Panicking, Langs stammered, trying to cover for himself. He lied, saying he hadn't abandoned Killian and that it was all a misunderstanding. He even tried to deflect blame onto Raymond, insisting that he had assigned the case to Raymond because of his success with saving Princess Sophia. But Killian, sitting up, angrily interrupted, exposing Langs' lies. He recounted how Langs had referred to him as a beggar and refused to treat him, and how Raymond had been the one to save him. The Count's anger erupted. He shouted that Langs had not only neglected his son's life but was also lying to his face. Langs, realizing the gravity of his actions, dropped to his knees, begging for forgiveness. But Count Augustus was far too clever to be swayed by such groveling. He was deeply disturbed that Langs would have left even a commoner to die, let alone his own son. The Count, with unwavering authority, ordered his guards to take Langs away, vowing to put him on trial for neglecting a noble. Langs pleaded for mercy, but the Count remained firm, his fury only growing as Langs' lack of compassion became more evident. With a final verdict, Count Augustus declared that Langs would never again be allowed to work, not only in Hoston but throughout the entire Cross Alliance. Langs was in disbelief, his entire career in ruins. As he was forcibly dragged out of the clinic, he begged for forgiveness, but the doors closed behind him, ending his healing career for good. Raymond and Hansen exchanged satisfied glances, feeling no sympathy for the disgraced healer. He had gotten what he deserved. Then, Count Augustus turned sharply towards Raymond, startling him. The young healer had been so engrossed in the drama that he had forgotten to properly greet the Count. But the Count, his face softening, placed a hand over his chest and expressed his deep gratitude to Raymond. In a move that shocked Raymond, the Count even bowed slightly before him, thanking him for saving his son. Raymond, pleased but flustered, asked the Count to raise his head, insisting that he had only done his duty. In truth, if it weren't for the hidden prince, the Augustus family would have lost an heir. The Count, still humbled, offered Raymond anything he desired as a token of his gratitude. Raymond's inner thoughts danced with excitement. He could hardly believe this outcome. The Count continued, offering something far greater than money or jewels. He invited Raymond to become a friend of the Augustus family. Raymond, confused at first, asked what that meant. The Count explained that although Raymond now held a Medal of Honor, he lacked power and status. As a friend of the Augustus family, Raymond would gain their full support, a privilege that held immense value. With this connection, no one would dare speak ill of Raymond, at least, not anyone who feared the Augustus family. Overcome with excitement, Raymond eagerly shook the Count's hands, unable to hide his joy. Count Augustus thanked Raymond once again for saving his son, then asked if there was anything else Raymond wanted. Laughing, Raymond requested that the Count pay the medical bills, noting that even though they were friends, in the world of doctor politics, everyone had to pay their dues. Thankfully, the Count was not a beggar, or Raymond joked that he would be in trouble. They parted on friendly terms, smiling and exchanging final thanks. In private, Count Augustus had a serious conversation with his son, Kilian. Kilian questioned his father about the reward, thinking it was too insignificant for someone who had saved his life, considering the chaos his death would have caused for the family. The Count reassured Kilian, explaining that no reward would have truly sufficed in that moment. He warned that with the power struggle growing more unpredictable, Raymond, the hidden prince, would no longer be able to avoid it. Count Augustus continued, saying that while Raymond was not directly in line for the throne, talent could not be hidden forever. Raymond, once regarded as worthless, had now shown his abilities for all to see. His royal blood and rising talent would inevitably attract enemies. The higher Raymond climbed, the more dangerous his path would become. The Count hoped that by supporting Raymond, their family could protect him from the dangers ahead. Meanwhile, in the second prince's quarters, the lavish interior reflected his refined taste. The prince was informed that Kilian had been saved by none other than Raymond, the very person he had dismissed as useless. The assassin he had hired knelt before him, explaining that though Kilian had been mortally wounded, the Bellin Clinic had somehow saved him. Neither the assassin nor the prince had anticipated this outcome. The second prince's carefully laid plans had been foiled by the hidden prince. Seething with anger, the second prince brooded over how Raymond had disrupted his scheme. He muttered insults at Raymond, frustrated that his plan had been ruined. Still, he remained composed, standing from his gilded chair and gazing out of a large panoramic window. The second prince decided he would have to keep a closer eye on Raymond, comparing him to a pet that had become too unruly. Back at the Bellin Clinic, Raymond treated an uncomplicated patient while reflecting on his conversation with Count Augustus. A surge of joy swept through him as he realized that after 5 long years, the opportunity he had been waiting for had finally arrived. With a clenched fist, he silently celebrated the fact that he could now take the healer's qualifying exam. Tears of joy welled up in his eyes as he thought of how close he was to becoming a real healer and doctor at the Bellin Clinic. However, whispers filled the clinic. The other healers and students gossiped about how Langs had been expelled because of Raymond. They speculated on how Raymond had managed to cure both Princess Sophia and Count Augustus's son, with some dismissing it as mere luck. One healer reminded the group that it was impossible to be lucky 3 times in a row, acknowledging that, strange as Raymond's method was, it clearly worked. 2 other healers reacted with shock and anger, dismissing the technique as pseudoscience. But the first healer stood firm, reminding them that the king himself had recognized the technique as legitimate. The other healers scoffed, claiming the king's paternal feelings must have clouded his judgment. Rumors spread that Raymond would be taking the exam to prove the effectiveness of his medical technique, but many doubted he would pass. Hansen, overhearing the conversation, felt disheartened by how little faith they had in Raymond. A few days later, the day of the qualifying exam arrived. Healers and apprentices gathered together, sitting on long wooden benches in the examination hall. Raymond and Hansen found seats next to each other. Raymond, brimming with confidence, had no doubt that he would pass the exam. After all, he had waited 5 years for this moment. Nearby students whispered among themselves, pointing at Raymond and calling him the hidden prince. They gossiped that, since Raymond was below F-rank, he shouldn't even be eligible for the exam, insinuating that his special privileges came from saving Princess Sophia. Hearing the students' remarks, Raymond's confidence wavered, and panic gripped him. What if he failed? The shame would be unbearable. Doubts clouded his mind, and he questioned whether he would ever have such a chance again. Sensing Raymond's nerves, Hansen tried to distract him by asking what he planned to do after passing the exam. Raymond, distracted from his worries, admitted that he hadn't really thought beyond the exam itself. His wishes were simple and even silly, he just wanted to eat meat. For 5 years, all Raymond had wanted was to pass the healer's exam. He had spent those years watching others treat patients while he was ignored, belittled, and humiliated. Now, all he wanted was the chance to heal patients himself. As he sat on the wooden bench, the faces of the patients he had saved flashed before his eyes. The feelings were indescribable, and his resolve hardened. The blue screen appeared before him, showing that his steel heart skill had increased. Raymond was surprised to see that his determination had grown even stronger just from thinking about his patients. Hansen encouraged Raymond further, reassuring him that he could pass the exam. Renewed by Hansen's words, Raymond's confidence returned. From a distance, one of the senior healers, who had believed in Raymond's technique, watched closely. He was surprised to see how calm and collected Raymond was, despite the pressure. Suddenly, the large doors to the hall swung open, and a woman entered, summoning Raymond for his exam. Raymond rose quickly from his seat, his confidence unwavering. He took a seat in a high chair before the examiners. The judges of the healing tower carefully studied his papers. One of the senior judges, surprised by what he read, asked Raymond if it was true that his level was below F rank. Another judge, a young man with red hair, smirked and asked Raymond to demonstrate his healing power. Raymond agreed and began to concentrate, summoning his healing abilities. He strained, focusing as green beams of light began to emerge from his hands. But the light was weak and quickly faded into a thin smoke. Raymond had used up all his healing energy, and it wasn't enough. The judges burst into laughter, mocking him openly. An exasperated red-haired judge asked Raymond what he had been thinking when he applied for the exam. Raymond, flustered and defensive, began making excuses like a timid kitten. The judges, unimpressed, told him to leave, but Raymond, desperate for another chance, pleaded with them to allow him to prove his strength in another technique. The red-haired judge's stern gaze, cold and full of disdain, was enough to silence most, but Raymond persisted. With a wave of the judge's hand, adorned with glittering jewelry, he dismissed Raymond, saying not to waste their time. Raymond had expected such a reaction to his weak healing ability, but he was prepared. Quickly, he activated a skill from his system, eloquence, which gave him the confidence to speak with authority. Standing tall, Raymond accused the healing tower of going against the will of King Houston. His audacity stunned the red-haired judge, who was horrified by Raymond's boldness. Raymond continued, acknowledging that his healing ability was lacking but reminding the judges that his medical techniques were officially recognized by the king. Some of the judges couldn't help but smile at Raymond's confident demeanor. The red-haired judge, unsure of how to react, recalled how modest Raymond had been at first. He admitted that while the judges wouldn't go against the king, the healing tower had never acknowledged other medical methods. With unwavering confidence, Raymond argued that if the healing tower respected King Houston, they should give him a chance to prove that his method worked. A few of the judges began whispering amongst themselves, agreeing that they should at least test Raymond's technique. Reluctantly, the red-haired judge, feeling the pressure of the others' opinions, agreed to give Raymond a chance. If Raymond could heal the patient assigned to him, the tower would recognize his technique. Overjoyed, Raymond approached the exam secretary and received a folder containing the patient's medical history. As he opened it, his expression quickly shifted to one of shock. The patient's condition was far more severe than he expected. His cheekbone twitched in disbelief as he realized that the judges had given him an incredibly difficult case. Earlier, the female judge had questioned the red-haired judge's decision to assign such a challenging patient to a student. The other judges had expressed concern, noting that no other healer had been able to treat the patient. However, the red-haired judge, clearly biased against Raymond, was determined to see him fail. He referenced Raymond's controversial methods, saying he had nearly harmed Princess Sophia, and expressed disdain for his surgical techniques. The tension in the room grew as the judges contemplated the consequences of their decision. Some feared that if Count Augustus found out they had assigned such a difficult patient to Raymond, he would intervene. But the red-haired judge assured them that the exam was under the tower's jurisdiction, and there was nothing the Count could do. His personal vendetta became clear when it was revealed that the fourth prince's mother, a cousin of the red-haired judge, had requested that Raymond be given no chance to pass the exam. Despite his initial fear, Raymond quickly analyzed the patient's condition. He realized that the patient suffered from severe bed sores, a condition difficult to treat. The red-haired judge scoffed, convinced that even experienced healers couldn't cure such a condition. But Raymond smiled, confident in his unique method. The judges, confused by Raymond's optimism, continued to discuss amongst themselves. They didn't understand why Raymond seemed so cheerful. Didn't he realize the severity of the disease? Without hesitation, Raymond made his way to the patient's home, eager to begin treatment. The house, a beautiful noble estate, was well kept. Raymond was greeted by the patient's son, who, though polite, seemed skeptical of yet another healer promising a cure for his father. Sitting on a plush cushion, Raymond assured the son that he could heal the old man, but first, he needed to assess the condition himself. The son led Raymond to a bright, spacious room where the bedridden father lay, motionless. A pungent, unpleasant odor filled the air, something Raymond hadn't encountered often in his previous cases. The son, embarrassed, apologized for the smell, but Raymond reassured him that it was natural for someone in such a state. The son was taken aback by Raymond's calmness. Other healers had frowned or recoiled when they entered the room. Raymond asked how long the patient had been bedridden and if he could be moved slightly. With his son's help, they carefully turned the man over, revealing the deep sores on his lower back. Though the sight was disheartening, Raymond remained focused. He was relieved that while the sores were severe, they hadn't yet reached the bones. He could still help. Seeing the concern on the son's face, Raymond quickly reassured him. He explained that the first step would be to remove the dead tissue and restore the skin, a promise that other healers had made but failed to deliver. The son was understandably skeptical, noting that even with previous treatments, the sores had always returned. Raymond, however, confidently stated that his method was different. He began by explaining his plan. He would perform a minor surgery to remove the dead tissue and drain the pus. The son, hearing words like surgery and removing tissue, was shocked and confused. But Raymond, having grown accustomed to such reactions, simply smiled and asked the son to trust him. With no assistant to aid him, Raymond relied on the patient's son, who nervously agreed to help. After preparing the necessary instruments, Raymond donned his medical robe and checked his system screen. His perception points had increased, and he noted with satisfaction that his skill in surgeon's dexterous hands had improved, boosting his confidence further. With precise, practiced movements, Raymond began the operation. He carefully removed the dead tissue and drained the pus, all the while using herbs with natural antibiotic properties to prevent infection. The patient's son watched in awe, shocked by the speed and efficiency with which Raymond worked. When the first stage of the procedure was complete, the son asked, astonished, if that was all. Raymond nodded, explaining that the next step was simple. The patient just needed to be turned regularly to prevent further bed sores from forming. The son, still bewildered, admitted that no other healer had mentioned something as straightforward as this. Raymond explained that bed sores were caused by lack of movement, something most people, even experienced healers, overlooked. Though confident in his approach, Raymond wasn't entirely satisfied with the patient's overall condition. He instructed the son to stay vigilant and watch his father closely until he recovered. The son, grateful and overwhelmed, showered Raymond with praise, amazed at how quickly the healer had tackled a problem that others had deemed incurable. Raymond diligently tended to the old man, visiting every day to adjust his position and change his medications. Thanks to Raymond's persistent care, the old man's condition gradually improved until he was even able to sit up. The patient and his son were beyond grateful, unable to stop thanking Raymond for his efforts. The son, overwhelmed with emotion, even fell to his knees, expressing his deep gratitude, explaining that they couldn't afford a higher-ranked healer and had almost resigned to the fact that the father would soon die. But now, thanks to Raymond, his father was recovering. Raymond, humble as always, insisted that he was just doing his duty, but the joy of seeing his patient recover gave him a boost of confidence. As the old man slowly began to walk again, Raymond advised him to keep moving so that the bed sores wouldn't reappear. Meanwhile, back at the Healing Tower's Houston branch, the news of Raymond's success spread quickly, much to the fury of Count Harrison. The Count, enraged beyond belief, couldn't fathom how Raymond had managed to cure the old man's ulcers. One of the healer judges confirmed that he had witnessed the entire process with his own eyes, leaving Harrison at a loss. Despite his bias against Raymond, there was no legitimate reason to disqualify him. However, now the tower faced a new dilemma. What rank should they assign Raymond? Raymond's natural healing abilities were below F rank, yet he had successfully treated a patient that even B rank healers had failed to heal. The discrepancy left the tower in confusion. Some argued that he deserved a higher rank, like B or A, based on his achievements, while others pointed out that his healing skill itself was still ranked below F. Count Harrison, deep in thought, read through Raymond's case file carefully. After deliberating, he made a controversial decision. Raymond would be given a D rating. The other judges gasped in disbelief, arguing that the rank was too low considering Raymond had successfully healed a B+ ranked patient. They reminded Harrison that even Count Augustus wouldn't approve of such a low rating, but Harrison angrily retorted that Count Augustus had no authority over the healing tower. However, Count Harrison soon realized that his decision could have larger political implications. What would King Houston think, especially since Raymond had also healed the princess when other high-ranking healers failed? Harrison began to panic, clenching his fists in frustration, but he couldn't risk disappointing the fourth queen either. In the end, he made a decision to escalate the issue to Healing Tower's main headquarters, the central authority that ruled over all 10 countries in the Crusader Alliance. The judges were surprised by the move, but they recognized that it was a safe decision. By involving the main headquarters, they could shift responsibility and avoid further conflict. Not long after, a response arrived from the main headquarters. Count Harrison opened the envelope in front of the other council members, and the surprise in his eyes was evident to everyone. The Healing Tower headquarters had decided to create a new rank specifically for Raymond, U rank. It was unprecedented. The other healers speculated that U might stand for undetermined, suggesting that even the headquarters had struggled to categorize Raymond's unique abilities. Earl Harrison, though surprised, quickly realized the brilliance of the decision. By giving Raymond an U rank, neither the fourth queen nor King Houston could argue against it. The title was undetermined, leaving room for interpretation, but it was also a recognition of Raymond's skill. Soon after, news of the new rank spread across the kingdom, and it became a hot topic of discussion. Many healers and students mocked Raymond's unusual rank, making jokes about what the U could stand for: undefined, unappreciated, or even unvalued. Despite the ridicule, a few quietly respected Raymond's talent. As time passed, people would come to realize that Raymond's U rank stood for something far more profound, unattainable, and absolute. His abilities were beyond the conventional rankings, and the title became a symbol of mastery. When Raymond finally received his exam results, he couldn't believe his eyes. Overcome with emotion, he burst into tears of joy. After years of hard work, he had finally achieved his dream of becoming an official healer. His 5-year apprenticeship was over, and he could now work independently, earning a good living as both a healer and a doctor. However, Raymond's joy quickly turned into reckless excitement. Grabbing a box of matches, he contemplated burning down the Bell and Clinic, the place where he had struggled for so many years. Just as he was about to strike the match, Hansen, his friend and fellow healer, entered the room to congratulate him on passing the exam. Hansen, surprised by the scene, asked Raymond what he was doing. Raymond, slightly embarrassed, claimed he was just cold. Hansen also shared the good news that he, too, had passed the exam and had been promoted to C rank. The two friends celebrated Hansen's bright future, as he had already been contacted by Maple Clinic, one of the top 3 clinics in the capital. Raymond gave Hansen a warm hug, congratulating him on his achievement. When Hansen asked Raymond about his own future plans, Raymond brushed off the question, saying they'd discuss it later. First, he wanted to celebrate and offered to treat Hansen to dinner. Hansen, curious, asked how Raymond had money since students didn't earn anything. Raymond, still jubilant from his success, explained that now that he had passed the exam, he was eligible for a healer's loan, giving him the funds to start fresh. The two celebrated with a night of food and drink, becoming so intoxicated that their tongues slurred and they could barely walk. As they sat together, Raymond, in his drunken state, dreamed aloud of stacks of meat that he would eat every day once he became rich. In the midst of their merriment, Hansen grew serious, bringing up a question he had been asking for weeks, about the ruins where Raymond had supposedly found his medical equipment. Hansen, desperate for answers, begged Raymond to tell him the location of the ruins, hoping to gain similar powers. Drunkenly, Raymond finally told Hansen the truth: there were no ruins. He laughed, admitting that he had made it all up. His powers had come to him mysteriously, like a miracle, while he was cleaning the library. The knowledge had simply appeared in his mind one day. Hansen, visibly shocked and angry, felt betrayed by the absurdity of the answer. He had hoped for a tangible explanation, a secret he could pursue. Instead, he was met with what felt like a lie, and his anger boiled over. Hansen, frustrated, accused Raymond of not trusting him enough to share the truth and stormed off in a drunken rage. He couldn't stand the idea that Raymond was hiding something from him. Later, while working at Maple Clinic, Hansen overheard his fellow healers discussing Raymond. They mentioned that Raymond had been offered a position at Raoul Clinic, the most prestigious clinic in the capital. Hansen, still nursing his grudge, was caught off guard when he heard that Raymond had turned down the offer. This baffled him, as such a prestigious opportunity rarely came knocking. Furious, Hansen decided to confront Raymond directly. Bursting into Raymond's room, Hansen found him asleep. Shaking him awake, Hansen began yelling, demanding to know why Raymond had turned down the offer from Raoul Clinic, which was bigger and better than Maple Clinic. Raymond, half asleep, explained that he had a different plan. He was going to open his own clinic. Hansen was stunned. Raymond had just passed his exam, and now he was rushing to open a clinic without any prior experience. Concerned, Hansen tried to reason with him, suggesting he gain experience at an established clinic first. But Raymond remained resolute. It had always been his dream to open his own clinic once he became a licensed healer. Raymond explained that his class rank as a resident novice required him to treat as many patients as possible to advance. If he worked at an established clinic, senior healers would push him aside, depriving him of opportunities to practice his skills. Therefore, he needed to be independent. Hansen then asked where Raymond intended to open his clinic, knowing that most neighborhoods were already dominated by established healers. Raymond revealed that he planned to open his clinic in the Bay Area, a poor and lawless neighborhood. Hansen was shocked and tried to dissuade him, insisting that it was a place where he couldn't possibly make money. But Raymond was more interested in gaining experience and was confident that many people in the Bay Area would need his help. Meanwhile, the Kingdom of Houston was abuzz with tension among the royal family. Prince Liberton, the third prince, had been observing Raymond's career closely, especially since Raymond had turned down the Raoul Clinic offer, an opportunity Liberton had orchestrated as a reward for Raymond saving Count Augustus's son. Liberton had hoped that Raymond would gain enough experience to eventually join his service, but now Raymond's rejection was a personal affront. Liberton's spies informed him that Raymond was opening a clinic in the Bay Area, shocking the prince. The Bay Area was a slum formed after Houston's wars with the Drun Kingdom, where displaced people had been relocated. Over a century, it had deteriorated into a dangerous, crime-ridden zone. Liberton, along with his brothers, had tried multiple times to stabilize the neighborhood, but all had failed. The king himself had once offered a reward to any of his sons who could bring peace to the Bay Area, but none succeeded. At the Bellin Clinic, where Raymond had been working, gossip spread about Raymond's bold move. The other healers mocked him, saying that a poor neighborhood like the Bay Area was exactly where an illegitimate child like Raymond belonged. However, Raymond remained determined, packing his things and preparing to leave. The patients at the clinic, who had grown fond of him, begged him to stay. One woman even grabbed his arm, worried about his safety in the Bay Area. Raymond, laughing, assured them that when he became rich and powerful, he'd be waiting for them to visit his new clinic. Just as Raymond was about to leave, Hansen caught up with him, holding a letter. Raymond, surprised, saw that the letter was from Princess Sophia. Upon reading the letter, Raymond realized that the princess was pleading with him not to go to the Bay Area. Hansen, having also read the letter, tried once again to convince Raymond to reconsider. He argued that Raymond could gain experience in safer places and reminded him of the dangers lurking in the Bay. But Raymond revealed something that shocked his friend. He had grown up in the Bay Area. Hansen was taken aback, having always believed that Raymond had lived in the royal palace after being taken in by nobility. Raymond clarified that while everyone knew he had lived in the slums before moving to the palace, few knew that he had been much happier in the Bay Area than in the palace. He confessed that it had always been his dream to open a clinic there, and he asked Hansen not to worry. He was familiar with the area and would be careful. Hansen, moved by Raymond's determination, felt a surge of both admiration and frustration. In a moment of impulsive anger, Hansen made a surprising offer. He would go with Raymond. Despite having accepted the position at Maple Clinic, Hansen felt more loyalty toward Raymond than to his new job. He admitted that he didn't like Maple Clinic very much anyway, as it was too focused on money and profit over healing people. Raymond genuinely cares for his patients, unlike many other healers. His dedication to healing makes him a figure of admiration for his friend Hansen, who continues to plead with Raymond to let him work alongside him. Hansen, however, has one small, yet nerve-wracking request. He wants Raymond to teach him his unique medical technique. Raymond is taken aback by this request. He questions Hansen, unsure if he's serious, but seeing Hansen's intense determination, Raymond realizes it's no joke. With a serious expression, Hansen makes it clear that this request means a lot to him. Though Raymond feels his level is too low to properly train anyone, a blue screen suddenly appears before him, revealing a new opportunity, the apprentice training mode. If Raymond accepts Hansen as his apprentice, they will both gain experience, although the effectiveness of the training will be limited due to Raymond's current low rank. Thinking it over, Raymond realizes the benefits. The experience points he would gain from training Hansen would increase significantly. With some hesitation, he agrees. Hansen, overwhelmed with joy, bows before Raymond, thanking him repeatedly for the opportunity. Raymond, now carrying the responsibility of being a mentor, gently places his hands on Hansen's shoulders, acknowledging that while he may not have the highest skill level yet, they would achieve greatness together. With Hansen officially becoming Raymond's first apprentice, the day of their long-awaited departure for the Bay Area arrives. As Raymond waits at the meeting point, Hansen arrives, decked out in iron armor. Seeing Raymond's bewildered expression, Hansen explains that the Bay Area is dangerous, so they need protection. Raymond can't help but laugh, even as Hansen jokes that Raymond should have worn chain mail underneath his clothes. Despite his light-hearted demeanor, Raymond is nervous too. It's been 2 decades since he's been to the lawless area. Before they leave, Hansen insists Raymond take something for self-defense, offering him an iron pipe. With another blue screen prompt, Raymond equips the pipe as a weapon, learning a self-defense skill. The absurdity of the situation makes Raymond laugh again as he twirls the pipe awkwardly, trying to calm his nerves. As they arrive at the Bay Area, the atmosphere changes. Criminal-looking men surround them with hostile gazes. Raymond assures Hansen that they'll recognize him, as he used to live here, but the fierce stares from the locals suggest otherwise. The residents don't take kindly to strangers, and it becomes clear that Raymond's past connection to the area doesn't grant him any favor. Despite the cold reception, Raymond and Hansen make their way to the clinic, a small, run-down, 2-story wooden building. Once inside, they clean and set everything up, preparing for the flood of patients they expect. However, days pass without a single visitor. Confused, Raymond wonders aloud why no one has come. Hansen suggests that perhaps the locals don't know there's a new clinic, but Raymond quickly dismisses the idea. The area is small, and news travels fast. Just as they ponder the situation, a bang echoes through the room as a rock shatters one of the clinic's windows. Hansen rushes outside to investigate and is shocked by what he sees. Calling Raymond over, the two are stunned to find their clinic's walls covered in red paint with threatening messages. The locals had scrawled ominous warnings, such as, "This is no place for kids," and threats of violence if they didn't leave. Hansen, panicked, urges Raymond to pack up and leave the Bay Area immediately. But Raymond, though shaken, refuses to give up. He calmly explains to Hansen that he can't just leave. He took out a loan to open this clinic, spent a fortune on the building, and if he walks away now, he'll face crippling debt. No, Raymond decides he has to stay, no matter the danger. Hansen is moved by Raymond's determination and, despite his own fears, offers to stay with him. Raymond, grateful for Hansen's support, suggests they need to take action to gain the locals' trust. They brainstorm ideas until Raymond comes up with a plan. They need to go to the central square and talk to the people directly. Nervous, Hansen warns Raymond that the square is the most dangerous part of the Bay Area, crowded with unsavory individuals. Nonetheless, the two make their way to the square, where they come across two men deep in conversation. When Raymond introduces himself, the men are initially unfriendly, but then recognition dawns on their faces. They remember Raymond as the boy who was taken to the royal palace years ago. For Raymond, this small glimmer of recognition gives him hope that all is not lost. Raymond tries to ease the tension with the two men at the square by making light of his past experiences in the Bay Area. He jokes about how he was beaten in an alley years ago, but his attempt at humor only enrages them. They cut him off, demanding to know why he's returned. Before Raymond can respond, they begin yelling, accusing him of being a nobleman who has no business in the Bay Area and threatening him to leave immediately. Feeling upset and realizing his memories don't hold any weight with these men, Raymond takes a deep breath and activates his steel heart skill. His tone shifts as he explains he didn't return for leisure or personal gain. He came to treat the sick because, unlike other healers who avoid this area, he believes that even the poor deserve proper care. The intensity of Raymond's words catches the men off guard. They stop shouting and begin to listen in silence as Raymond continues his passionate speech. He raises his fist, shouting that healers don't want to treat people like them, people from the Bay Area. He recalls that his own mother died here because no one cared enough to treat her, a revelation that shocks even Hansen, who never knew the true reason for Raymond's return. As Raymond's voice echoes across the square, more people gather, mouths agape, stunned by his words. Raymond concludes his speech by declaring that he won't allow the people of the Bay Area to suffer like his mother did. He vows to treat anyone who needs help, no matter their status or wealth. The two men who initially berated him are left speechless, unsure of how to respond. Raymond, aware that they might still be skeptical, goes a step further. He makes a bold promise. He will cure the patients of Curson Street, a place avoided by everyone due to its reputation as a cursed, disease-ridden area. The crowd is stunned into silence. Even Hansen is horrified by Raymond's proclamation. Curson Street, the former red light district, is believed to be cursed, its inhabitants suffering from a disease they call divine karma. It's a place feared by all. Hansen begs Raymond to reconsider, fearing that the disease will spread to them as well. But Raymond, confident in his medical knowledge, believes he knows what disease they are actually dealing with. Determined, Raymond tells Hansen he doesn't have to come, but Hansen insists on following his mentor. Hansen is terrified but also committed to learning everything he can from Raymond. Together, they head to the infamous Curson Street. Upon reaching the first house, a woman answers the door, her body fully covered by clothing. Her face is barely visible through a thin, translucent shawl. When Raymond introduces himself as a healer, she laughs mockingly, thinking his attempt to cure her and the others is absurd. She sarcastically agrees to let him try and slowly removes her shawl, revealing her skin, which is covered in red and black spots. Hansen is horrified, immediately assuming it's an infection caused by the so-called divine karma. However, Raymond remains calm and asks the woman for permission to examine her. Shocked by his fearlessness, the woman agrees, and Raymond carefully inspects her skin. His suspicions grow stronger as he notices the distinct sores associated with a specific illness. After examining the woman, Raymond confidently diagnoses the disease. It's not a curse, it's syphilis, an infectious disease. The revelation surprises everyone in the room, including Hansen. The women, who had lived in fear of a divine curse, are taken aback by the unfamiliar word. Raymond goes on to explain that, unlike the syphilis they may have heard of, this form of the disease has been left untreated for so long that the symptoms are continuous, rather than dormant. Hansen, always diligent in his role as apprentice, scribbles down everything Raymond says in his notebook. He asks how Raymond plans to treat the disease. Raymond, noticing a pile of moldy bread on the floor, asks the women if they're going to eat it. They're puzzled and ask why he would want it. Raymond laughs and explains that he plans to make a magic pill from the mold. Hansen is stunned, as are the women. Whispering, Hansen asks Raymond what he intends to do with the moldy bread. Raymond, with a knowing smile, reveals that the mold will help him create penicillin, a revolutionary antibiotic. However, since penicillin can be expensive, Raymond decides to make it himself using the mold from the bread. He cuts the mold carefully, soaks it in water, and evaporates it slowly, producing a clear, turquoise liquid, the magic pill. Raymond instructs the women to apply this solution to the infected areas. Over the next several days, he continues treating them, applying the antibiotic regularly. His efforts earn him a significant amount of experience points, raising his skill level and even granting him the alchemy skill. New terms and knowledge flood into Raymond's mind. Catalyst, extraction, allowing him to extract the necessary components from herbs and substances more efficiently. Having created the first antibiotic on the continent, Raymond successfully treats the women of Curson Street, proving that their affliction was never a curse but a common disease. His innovative use of penicillin brings hope to a place long forgotten, and Hansen, now in awe of his mentor's brilliance, diligently records every step of the process. As Raymond continues his healing work, word of his success spreads quickly throughout the kingdom. The women from Curson Street, once isolated and abandoned due to their condition, are overjoyed as they see the red sores on their bodies begin to disappear. Hansen, though exhausted from the relentless work, is content to see the fruits of their labor. Despite his fatigue, he knows they are making a difference. Soon, the whole kingdom of Houston is buzzing with the news of Raymond's clinic. The women, finally healed and feeling beautiful again, silently thank Raymond, and some even offer to repay him. However, Raymond, understanding their lack of means, reassures them that his goal is to help people, not to charge exorbitant fees. Though in the back of his mind, he knows he needs money to grow his clinic and pursue his ultimate goal of wealth, he's driven by his desire to cure his patients and prove his dedication. Hansen, completely worn out, falls asleep from exhaustion. Meanwhile, Raymond's reputation soars. People across the Bay Area are astonished by the fact that Raymond, once a noble, has not only cured the entire Curse Street but has done so without charging a single penny. Soon, the clinic is flooded with patients, the line stretching far down the street. Raymond and Hansen handle the influx with ease, organizing patients by having them take tickets before being seen. Many of them come in with symptoms of syphilis, particularly men. Despite the overwhelming number of cases, Raymond remains calm, his skills and experience growing with every patient he helps. People express deep gratitude, especially an old woman whose life Raymond saved. Her young son thanks Raymond profusely, his eyes shining with admiration. Raymond is deeply moved by the appreciation from his patients, though he hides his emotions behind a calm demeanor. As the clinic becomes busier, Hansen, in awe of Raymond's brilliance, asks him how he came up with such incredible treatments. Raymond, however, is unsure himself. He explains to Hansen that the knowledge just came to him one day, as if by divine intervention. Their conversation is interrupted when a young red-haired girl bursts into the clinic, tears streaming down her face. She grabs Raymond's hands, begging him to save her mother, who is suffering from severe stomach pain. Hansen, admiring Raymond's sincerity, watches as Raymond quickly prepares for surgery. The operation is a success, but it leaves both Raymond and Hansen exhausted after a long day of treating patients from morning until night. That evening, Hansen suggests they review the clinic's finances. As they go over the paperwork, however, they realize the clinic is operating at a significant loss. Raymond, unwilling to charge those who cannot afford it, has put them in a precarious financial situation. Despite the bleak numbers, Hansen remains optimistic, knowing that gaining experience and building a reputation is more important in the long run. They both laugh, raising their hands in celebration of the future, hoping that wealthier patients will eventually come seeking their help. However, their joyous moment is interrupted by a tall, angry man overhearing their conversation. This man, along with a group of other illegal healers, is furious with Raymond's clinic for stealing all their business. Back at his home, he discusses with his associates, a man and a woman, their plan to undermine Raymond. They want to drive up the cost of treatment to force patients back to their illegal operations. The next day, Raymond and Hansen are confronted by a group of angry people outside the clinic. These are the members of the Bay Area Healers Association, and they demand to know who Raymond is. When Raymond introduces himself, they arrogantly order him to raise the cost of treatment from 10 pennies to 100. Raymond is shocked, knowing full well that no one in the Bay Area could afford such a fee. He quickly realizes that this is a ploy to drive people back to the illegal healers. The head of the illegal healers sneers, showing no concern for the welfare of the people. They openly mock Raymond, saying that those who can't afford treatment should just die elsewhere. The rage that Raymond feels at this moment is palpable, and he recalls the memory of his mother dying due to a lack of proper medical care. His heart aches, and he becomes furious at the realization that these very people are responsible for the suffering in the Bay Area. In a show of strength, Raymond adopts a commanding presence and speaks with authority, reminding the illegal healers that they are speaking to a nobleman. The illegal healers laugh, claiming they have the support of Count Augustus. However, Raymond counters by reminding them that Count Augustus himself would not tolerate any harm done to a nobleman like him. Sensing that Raymond might actually have the upper hand, the illegal healers grow uneasy. Not wanting to provoke the wrath of Count Augustus, they reluctantly decide to back down for now. After the illegal healers left, Raymond confided in Hansen, expressing surprise at how assertively he had dealt with the criminals. He knew these thugs only bullied the weak, and despite the trouble, he apologized to the patients waiting outside. Meanwhile, the illegals retreated to their luxurious hideout to plot their next move. There we get to know Langs, the disgraced former chief healer of the Bellin Clinic. Langs was involved in this. Langs, bitter about his fall from grace, was determined to ruin Raymond, whom he blamed for his downfall. Langs devised a plan to tarnish Raymond's reputation by spreading rumors that Raymond was a fraud who used the poor as test subjects. Though one of the illegals wondered how they could pull it off, given that Raymond had successfully treated many people, Langs proposed bribing patients to speak ill of him. However, when one of the illegals attempted to bribe the residents, he was met with stoning and returned battered. The people, grateful to Raymond, now despised the illegals and had no need to fear them anymore. Despite the failure, Langs wasn't deterred. He suggested reaching out to the Blue Moon Guild, a group that maintained order in the Bay Area but had a strained relationship with the illegals. The guild, led by a straightforward but naive man named Kerr, was created to protect the poor from the Dark Blade faction. Though the guild had previously tolerated the illegals, Langs hoped to manipulate them into believing Raymond was a threat. With a teary-eyed performance, Langs told Kerr that Raymond was experimenting on the poor to test dangerous cures, despite Raymond's public charity. Kerr, hearing Langs' words, grew furious. Even though he had heard about Raymond's one-penny treatments, Langs' convincing lies made him believe that Raymond was exploiting the poor. Slamming his hand on the table, Kerr vowed to stop Raymond's experiments and quickly set off toward the clinic, fueled by misplaced anger. Upon storming into the clinic, Kerr's massive, scarred presence terrified everyone inside. Hansen and the healers quaked with fear as Kerr demanded to know which one of them was Raymond. Raymond, however, kept his composure, although his heart raced. He politely asked why Kerr was there, but the guild leader, angry and agitated, grabbed Raymond by the shoulder and ordered him to pack up and leave the Bay Area. Though initially startled, Raymond regained his calm as Kerr's grip slipped from his shoulder. Kerr continued to threaten Raymond and the healers, promising to destroy them if they didn't leave. Hansen, shaking, was too scared to respond, but Raymond remained composed, focusing on the guild leader's irrational fury. Suddenly, one of Raymond's patients, a young, bandaged boy, stepped forward and boldly confronted Kerr, asking why he was so angry with Raymond, who had done nothing but help the sick. Kerr, still agitated, repeated Langs' lies about Raymond using the poor for medical experiments. The patients, including the boy, were stunned by such accusations. Raymond, however, couldn't remain silent any longer. He forcefully denied the claim, stating it was all a lie spread by the Bay Area healers, who were angry about his affordable services. As Raymond spoke, a pop-up appeared in front of him, showing the activation of the method of dealing skill and a quest called Cure the Patient. The quest's goal was to treat patients sincerely so they would become devoted to him, and the difficulty was marked as low. Seeing the quest, Raymond realized that Kerr was not just an angry guild leader, he was also a potential patient. His fear began to fade, replaced with clarity. Raymond explained to Kerr that his healing methods had been recognized by both the king and the healing tower. He asserted that the real reason the Bay Area healers were angry was that they charged high fees, while Raymond provided affordable care. Langs, in particular, was notorious for his exorbitant charges. Kerr, now conflicted, started to believe Raymond's words. Still, he hesitated, unsure of what to do next. Raymond saw his opportunity and invited Kerr to sit down and talk, offering him a cup of tea. Sensing that Kerr had his own ailments, Raymond gently asked if he had any health issues that other healers had failed to cure. Reluctantly, Kerr admitted that he had been suffering from a painful condition, hemorrhoids, that caused him pain and bleeding every time he went to the bathroom. Raymond seized the moment, reassuring Kerr that the condition could be cured but would require surgery. Kerr, nervous and skeptical, initially suspected that Raymond might want to experiment on him, especially since Langs had been charging him an exorbitant fee for treatments that only provided temporary relief. However, Raymond's calm demeanor and professional explanation began to ease Kerr's suspicions. Seeing Kerr's uncertainty, Raymond emphasized that the root of the problem needed to be addressed for the hemorrhoids to go away permanently, unlike the ineffective treatments Langs had been providing. Raymond's confidence and expertise convinced Kerr that he might finally be able to rid himself of the pain that had plagued him for so long. Despite the initial skepticism, Kaner agreed to the surgery for his hemorrhoids, desperate for a permanent solution after years of suffering and failed treatments from Langs. Raymond, alongside Hansen, prepared the necessary instruments for the procedure. With precision and confidence, Raymond excised the hemorrhoidal nodes. The operation was a success, and Raymond received bonus points for completing the quest. Kaner, astonished by the speed and efficiency of the surgery, was deeply grateful. Raymond recommended that Kaner take sitting baths for the next 3 days to manage the pain, and Kaner nearly wept with relief, having suffered from the condition for years. Raymond, meanwhile, wondered how much he should charge for the surgery, finally settling on 30 pennies. But Kaner, overwhelmed with gratitude, gave Raymond a bag of gold pennies, 300 in total, far exceeding Raymond's expectations. As Kaner left the clinic, he promised to deal with Langs and the rest of the illegals for their lies and deceit. True to his word, Kaner soon paid a visit to Lang's hideout. With fury in his eyes, Kaner beat Langs and his cronies, knocking out several of Lang's teeth. He ordered them to leave the Bay Area immediately, or he would finish what he started. The illegals, utterly defeated, fled the area. From that point on, Raymond's clinic flourished, and the people of the Bay Area idolized him for his skill and kindness. Raymond's reputation soared, and his level increased to 20 as he gained more experience and skill points. However, one day, Kaner rushed back to Raymond's clinic in a panic, warning him of a new threat. A man with a highly contagious disease had appeared, believed to be infected with smallpox, one of the deadliest diseases known. Kaner urged Raymond and Hansen to flee, as the disease was so dangerous that the infected would soon be incinerated to prevent its spread. Hansen, terrified, begged Raymond to leave, reminding him of the Tower of Healing's unofficial advice to escape during smallpox or plague outbreaks. Raymond, understanding the severity of smallpox, realized that billions had died from the disease. But something didn't sit right with him. When a young girl from the crowd questioned if they were sure it was smallpox, Raymond began to reconsider. She mentioned that smallpox hadn't been seen in the kingdom for a long time, making its sudden reappearance suspicious. Raymond inquired about the symptoms, and a young boy informed him that the patients had high fevers and red rashes. Raymond, relieved, recognized that these symptoms could indicate other diseases, not necessarily smallpox. He knew he had to see the infected patients himself to be certain. Although the disease was airborne and highly contagious, Raymond couldn't stand by while innocent people were burned alive. At that moment, a quest appeared on Raymond's blue screen: save the people from an unjust death. The quest confirmed Raymond's suspicion: it wasn't smallpox, and he could save them. Determined, Raymond refused to leave, instructing Hansen to bring thick cloth for face masks, along with gowns and gloves to cover their bodies. Hansen, horrified at what Raymond was about to do, watched as Raymond confidently declared that he would meet with the patients. Armed with protective gear, including a mask and hazmat suit, Raymond and Hansen headed to the building where the infected were held. As they approached, they were met by a crowd of villagers with torches, ready to burn the building and everyone inside. Raymond, removing his hood, introduced himself as Healer Raymond, and asked them to hold off on their actions. The villagers, shocked by his presence, explained that they believed the family inside was infected with smallpox and had to be burned. But Raymond questioned how they identified the disease without a healer, and the villagers hesitated, admitting that the high fever and rash seemed like smallpox. Raymond explained that other diseases could present with similar symptoms and asked for a chance to confirm the diagnosis. Though the villagers were horrified, Raymond reassured them that he knew how to protect himself. He activated his shield magic, creating a temporary barrier to prevent any airborne infection from reaching him. Although he knew the magic wouldn't last long, his protective gear would be enough to keep him safe. With his shield in place and his protective suit on, Raymond approached the building. The crowd watched in stunned silence, as if they were witnessing his final moments. Even Hansen was astonished to learn that Raymond possessed shield magic. Once inside, Raymond found a woman and her 3 children, all crying and visibly ill. Introducing himself as a healer, Raymond promised to help them determine what disease they were suffering from. But the first thing the woman asked was whether he was the prince. It wasn't the first time Raymond had been referred to as prince, but once again he corrected them, insisting that he was a healer, not royalty. As the children rushed to hug him, Raymond carefully began examining their symptoms. After a thorough evaluation, he realized that while the rash was similar to smallpox, there were subtle differences that confirmed it was not the deadly disease they feared. Raymond quickly reassured the children's mother, explaining that the disease they had was actually chickenpox, not the feared reaper of death, smallpox. The mother was overjoyed by the news, and Raymond advised her that the children would recover naturally as long as they didn't touch the rash. Raymond then stepped outside to inform the gathered villagers that the disease wasn't dangerous and there was no need for drastic measures. Days later, the children had fully recovered, and their mother expressed her immense gratitude to Raymond, recognizing that without his intervention, her family would have been burned alive. The villagers, too, realized the gravity of Raymond's actions and approached him with deep appreciation. Some of the men who had held torches that fateful night thanked Raymond for stopping them from making a fatal mistake. Raymond's reputation in the Bay Area soared, and he leveled up, earning bonus points for completing the quest. He was now well known and respected among the residents, who were grateful to live in peace thanks to him. Meanwhile, in the Kingdom of Houston, the red-haired healer at the Tower of Healing conversed with King Odin. With tensions rising between their kingdom and Dayton, the healer suggested wiping out the Bay Area, fearing it could become a problem during the upcoming war. Prince Limon had even supported this idea. However, King Odin hesitated, not wanting to destroy an entire neighborhood of his own citizens without proper justification. Back at Raymond's clinic, the smell of roasting meat filled the air. Hansen, standing by the stove, was preparing a feast. Meat and vegetables gifted by the mother of the children Raymond had cured of chickenpox. Since it was known to boost the immune system, Hansen thought it was the perfect meal for healers, helping them stay healthy. As Raymond sat down to enjoy the delicious dinner, he reflected on his progress. He had reached level 29 and was already dreaming of hitting level 40 to graduate from the rank of resident novice. During dinner, Hansen, still curious, asked Raymond about the shield magic he had used during the chickenpox incident. Raymond explained that it was an accidental ability he had gained, though its effects were brief. Mana was the source of miracles, he said, explaining that healers, mages, and knights all used mana in different ways. While mages stored it in their heart and knights in their lower abdomen, healers stored mana in a difficult-to-access core near the top of their body. Despite his efforts, Raymond knew his mana reserves were minimal, and no matter how much he tried, his healing abilities would never exceed certain limitations. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden scream for help. A woman had rushed to the clinic, desperate for assistance. Her husband had fallen from a roof and couldn't breathe. Raymond and Hansen jumped to action, with Raymond instructing Hansen to start performing CPR on the patient. Unbeknownst to Raymond, King Odin and his loyal companion, Gman, had secretly entered the Bay Area, disguised as ordinary citizens. Gman questioned the king's decision to visit in secret, but Odin reassured him that he was a master swordsman and in no danger. They decided to explore the area, eventually ending up at a local tavern. There, they overheard a conversation about Raymond. Two men were discussing a recent patient death, spreading rumors that Raymond had failed during CPR and was possibly experimenting on slum residents. These words hurt King Odin, but before he could react, a young girl in the tavern shouted in defense of Raymond. She explained that Raymond had tried his hardest to save the patient, and when he failed, he had knelt beside the body and wept, heartbroken over his inability to save the man. It was Raymond's first patient death, and the girl stressed how sincere and compassionate he was. Her words resonated with everyone in the tavern, and the conversation quickly shifted to praising Raymond. Another resident shared how Raymond had saved his son's life, and soon the entire tavern was raising their mugs in honor of the slum prince. Raymond's reputation continued to grow, earning him a new title, Robin Hood. With it came additional benefits, though Raymond was unaware of what exactly that meant. As the king and Gman left the tavern, they discussed Raymond's remarkable reputation. Gman, once skeptical, now believed that Raymond would survive and thrive even in a place like the Bay Area. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by King Odin's worsening cough, but the king brushed it off, dismissing it as nothing serious. As they began to head back to the palace, they suddenly heard a woman's desperate cries for help. As King Odin and Gman rushed into the dark alley, they were confronted by three large men holding a red-haired girl hostage. The criminals ordered them to stay out of the way, but the girl, pleading for help, caught the king's attention. Calm and composed, King Odin instructed Gman to step aside. He then drew his sword, its blade glowing with a menacing purple aura. The criminals were taken aback by the magic emanating from the king's sword, but despite their protests, King Odin charged forward with unmatched ferocity. With swift and powerful strikes, the king incapacitated the three men, leaving the girl momentarily safe. As she sat on the ground, visibly shaken, her innocent demeanor quickly shifted. In an instant, she revealed a blade imbued with a blue aura, lunging toward King Odin with deadly intent. The blade struck his left arm, leaving behind black smoke as a sign of poison. Shocked and enraged, King Odin recognized her immediately. She was the elusive red-haired assassin who had been hunting him for some time. Though wounded, the king refused to back down. He stared at the assassin with a cold, piercing gaze, preparing to counter her next move. The assassin, determined to finish her mission, muttered an incantation in an ancient language, activating a smoke screen spell. White smoke enveloped the alley, but King Odin remained unfazed. Despite the smoke worsening his cough, he stayed alert. Using the reflection of his glowing sword, he anticipated her next move. As she approached, he struck swiftly, driving his sword through her heart and ending the battle in a single decisive blow. Covered in the assassin's blood, King Odin stood victorious. Gman rushed over, concerned for the king's well-being. Though King Odin downplayed his injury, claiming it was just a scratch, Gman noticed that the area around the wound had started turning blue, a clear sign of poison. The king realized that necrosis had already begun, and without immediate treatment, he risked losing his arm. Gman, thinking quickly, suggested going to Raymond's clinic, which was nearby. Though hesitant at first, King Odin agreed that they needed urgent help. The two made their way to Raymond's clinic, where Raymond greeted them with a friendly smile, unaware of their true identities. Upon seeing the king's injury, Raymond immediately grew serious. Gman explained that the king had been poisoned, and Raymond, though curious about their secrecy, proceeded with his duty as a healer. Examining the wound, Raymond realized that the poison was a deadly mix of hemotoxin and neurotoxin, likely derived from the venom of the three white snakes mixed with alpine rose. This specific combination required a special antidote, which Raymond had on hand, but he warned that it might not be fully effective due to the enhanced nature of the poison. To maximize the antidote's effectiveness, Raymond suggested a method that shocked Gman, injecting the antidote directly into the king's vein using a syringe. On the continent of Lapon, syringes were virtually unknown, and Gman was appalled by the suggestion. He angrily demanded that Raymond reveal his true intentions, accusing him of being untrustworthy. King Odin, recalling the rumors he overheard at the tavern about Raymond experimenting on patients, asked if it was true that someone had recently died in his clinic. The question hit Raymond hard, but he maintained his composure, explaining that the death had deeply affected him, and he had done everything he could to save the patient. Raymond's skill, steel heart, activated, calming his nerves and allowing him to face the situation confidently. Despite Gman's continued protests, King Odin decided to trust Raymond, especially after Raymond swore on his family name that there was no other way to heal the poison. Touched by the sincerity of Raymond's words, the king agreed to the treatment. Raymond, now fully in control, donned a pair of white gloves and prepared the antidote. As he drew the liquid into the syringe, he explained the procedure to King Odin, reassuring him that the pain would be minimal. With careful precision, Raymond injected the antidote into the king's arm. Gman, anxious, watched closely, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. At first, King Odin felt a strange sensation coursing through his body, and for a moment he staggered. Raymond, too, was nervous. This was the first time he had used a syringe for this type of treatment. But to everyone's relief, the king soon regained his composure, reporting that the dizziness and headache were gone. While not fully healed, he felt a significant improvement. After the antidote was administered, King Odin noticed something unusual. The treatment had worked much faster than expected. Normally, such remedies took time to take effect, but under healer Raymond's care, the results were almost instantaneous. Raymond, pleased with the success of his procedure, explained that the wound would heal naturally from this point forward, putting the king's worries to rest. King Odin realized that if he hadn't sought out Raymond's help, he might have lost his arm forever. It was the second time Raymond had assisted the royal family, and this fact was not lost on the king. As they discussed the treatment, Raymond's apprentice, Hansen, appeared, concerned that he had missed the commotion. King Odin, grateful for Raymond's help, offered a reward. However, Raymond, without hesitation, asked only for the payment due for his services, not feeling the need to place the king in debt. Gman, astounded by Raymond's humility, emphasized that they were powerful people, and Raymond could request anything he desired. But Raymond stood firm, explaining that a small fee would suffice. Gman was struck by Raymond's purity, seeing that he was genuinely more interested in helping others than in wealth. When King Odin inquired about the cost of the treatment, Raymond casually stated that it would be 500 pennies, the highest rate he had ever charged for his services. King Odin, with a fierce gaze, questioned the amount, as Hansen quietly informed him that such a sum was enough to support a commoner for half a year. Yet Raymond remained confident, reiterating that 500 pennies was a fair price for the treatment. The king and Gman, however, thought differently. In their world, S-Rank healers charged at least 15,000 pennies for such services. Gman now understood why Raymond was so beloved in the Bay Area. He treated patients without overcharging. King Odin, intrigued by Raymond's values, asked why a healer of his skill would subject himself to such hardship. Raymond simply laughed, explaining that it was all for a greater purpose, to serve his patients. The king, surprised by this selfless mindset, was moved by Raymond's dedication to healing. Though King Odin appreciated Raymond's humility, he had no money on hand to pay the healer. Instead, he handed Raymond a valuable ring, instructing him to sell it to cover the cost. Raymond, thrilled by the sight of the ring, immediately saw its worth. As he examined it, Hansen pointed out that the gemstone was a mermaid's tear, worth more than 10,000 pennies. Overwhelmed by the generosity, Raymond could hardly believe his luck. As they were leaving, King Odin turned to Raymond and, with a sly smile, remarked that the ring wasn't enough to cover the full cost of what Raymond had done for him. Raymond, confused, tried to ask the king what he meant, but Odin simply promised that he would return to see how the clinic had evolved. Raymond and Hansen, bewildered by the statement, stood in silence as the royal party departed. Gman, however, had an inkling of the king's intentions. He was curious to see how his son, Raymond, would continue to grow and improve his clinic. Outside, King Odin turned to Gman and, now that his arm was healing, refocused on a more pressing issue, the assassination attempt. He instructed Gman to find the informant in the palace, as it was clear someone inside had plotted against him. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Houston, The red-haired healer at the Tower of Healing conversed with King Odin. With tensions rising between their kingdom and Dayton, the healer suggested wiping out the Bay Area, fearing it could become a problem during the upcoming war. Prince Limon had even supported this idea. However, King Odin hesitated, not wanting to destroy an entire neighborhood of his own citizens without proper justification. Back at Raymond's clinic, the smell of roasting meat filled the air. Hansen, standing by the stove, was preparing a feast. Meat and vegetables gifted by the mother of the children Raymond had cured of chickenpox. Since it was known to boost the immune system, Hansen thought it was the perfect meal for healers, helping them stay healthy. As Raymond sat down to enjoy the delicious dinner, he reflected on his progress. He had reached level 29 and was already dreaming of hitting level 40 to graduate from the rank of resident novice. During dinner, Hansen, still curious, asked Raymond about the shield magic he had used during the chickenpox incident. Raymond explained that it was an accidental ability he had gained, though its effects were brief. Mana was the source of miracles, he said, explaining that healers, mages, and knights all used mana in different ways. While mages stored it in their heart and knights in their lower abdomen, healers stored mana in a difficult-to-access core near the top of their body. Despite his efforts, Raymond knew his mana reserves were minimal, and no matter how much he tried, his healing abilities would never exceed certain limitations. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden scream for help. A woman had rushed to the clinic, desperate for assistance. Her husband had fallen from a roof and couldn't breathe. Raymond and Hansen jumped to action, with Raymond instructing Hansen to start performing CPR on the patient. Unbeknownst to Raymond, King Odin and his loyal companion, Gman, had secretly entered the Bay Area, disguised as ordinary citizens. Gman questioned the king's decision to visit in secret, but Odin reassured him that he was a master swordsman and in no danger. They decided to explore the area, eventually ending up at a local tavern. There, they overheard a conversation about Raymond. Two men were discussing a recent patient death, spreading rumors that Raymond had failed during CPR and was possibly experimenting on slum residents. These words hurt King Odin, but before he could react, a young girl in the tavern shouted in defense of Raymond. She explained that Raymond had tried his hardest to save the patient, and when he failed, he had knelt beside the body and wept, heartbroken over his inability to save the man. It was Raymond's first patient death, and the girl stressed how sincere and compassionate he was. Her words resonated with everyone in the tavern, and the conversation quickly shifted to praising Raymond. Another resident shared how Raymond had saved his son's life, and soon the entire tavern was raising their mugs in honor of the slum prince. Raymond's reputation continued to grow, earning him a new title, Robin Hood. With it came additional benefits, though Raymond was unaware of what exactly that meant. As the king and Gman left the tavern, they discussed Raymond's remarkable reputation. Gman, once skeptical, now believed that Raymond would survive and thrive even in a place like the Bay Area. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by King Odin's worsening cough, but the king brushed it off, dismissing it as nothing serious. As they began to head back to the palace, they suddenly heard a woman's desperate cries for help. As King Odin and Gman rushed into the dark alley, they were confronted by three large men holding a red-haired girl hostage. The criminals ordered them to stay out of the way, but the girl, pleading for help, caught the king's attention. Calm and composed, King Odin instructed Gman to step aside. He then drew his sword, its blade glowing with a menacing purple aura. The criminals were taken aback by the magic emanating from the king's sword, but despite their protests, King Odin charged forward with unmatched ferocity. With swift and powerful strikes, the king incapacitated the three men, leaving the girl momentarily safe. As she sat on the ground, visibly shaken, her innocent demeanor quickly shifted. In an instant, she revealed a blade imbued with a blue aura, lunging toward King Odin with deadly intent. The blade struck his left arm, leaving behind black smoke as a sign of poison. Shocked and enraged, King Odin recognized her immediately. She was the elusive red-haired assassin who had been hunting him for some time. Though wounded, the king refused to back down. He stared at the assassin with a cold, piercing gaze, preparing to counter her next move. The assassin, determined to finish her mission, muttered an incantation in an ancient language, activating a smoke screen spell. White smoke enveloped the alley, but King Odin remained unfazed. Despite the smoke worsening his cough, he stayed alert. Using the reflection of his glowing sword, he anticipated her next move. As she approached, he struck swiftly, driving his sword through her heart and ending the battle in a single decisive blow. Covered in the assassin's blood, King Odin stood victorious. Man rushed over, concerned for the king's well-being. Though King Odin downplayed his injury, claiming it was just a scratch, Man noticed that the area around the wound had started turning blue, a clear sign of poison. The king realized that necrosis had already begun, and without immediate treatment, he risked losing his arm. Man, thinking quickly, suggested going to Raymond's clinic, which was nearby. Though hesitant at first, King Odin agreed that they needed urgent help. The two made their way to Raymond's clinic, where Raymond greeted them with a friendly smile, unaware of their true identities. Upon seeing the king's injury, Raymond immediately grew serious. Man explained that the king had been poisoned, and Raymond, though curious about their secrecy, proceeded with his duty as a healer. Examining the wound, Raymond realized that the poison was a deadly mix of hemotoxin and neurotoxin, likely derived from the venom of the 3 white snakes mixed with alpine rose. This specific combination required a special antidote, which Raymond had on hand, but he warned that it might not be fully effective due to the enhanced nature of the poison. To maximize the antidote's effectiveness, Raymond suggested a method that shocked Gman, injecting the antidote directly into the king's vein using a syringe. On the continent of Lapon, syringes were virtually unknown, and Gman was appalled by the suggestion. He angrily demanded that Raymond reveal his true intentions, accusing him of being untrustworthy. King Odin, recalling the rumors he overheard at the tavern about Raymond experimenting on patients, asked if it was true that someone had recently died in his clinic. The question hit Raymond hard, but he maintained his composure, explaining that the death had deeply affected him, and he had done everything he could to save the patient. Raymond's skill, steel heart, activated, calming his nerves and allowing him to face the situation confidently. Despite Gman's continued protests, King Odin decided to trust Raymond, especially after Raymond swore on his family name that there was no other way to heal the poison. Touched by the sincerity of Raymond's words, the king agreed to the treatment. Raymond, now fully in control, donned a pair of white gloves and prepared the antidote. As he drew the liquid into the syringe, he explained the procedure to King Odin, reassuring him that the pain would be minimal. With careful precision, Raymond injected the antidote into the king's arm. Man, anxious, watched closely, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. At first, King Odin felt a strange sensation coursing through his body, and for a moment he staggered. Raymond, too, was nervous. This was the first time he had used a syringe for this type of treatment. But to everyone's relief, the king soon regained his composure, reporting that the dizziness and headache were gone. While not fully healed, he felt a significant improvement. After the antidote was administered, King Odin noticed something unusual. The treatment had worked much faster than expected. Normally, such remedies took time to take effect, but under healer Raymond's care, the results were almost instantaneous. Raymond, pleased with the success of his procedure, explained that the wound would heal naturally from this point forward, putting the king's worries to rest. King Odin realized that if he hadn't sought out Raymond's help, he might have lost his arm forever. It was the second time Raymond had assisted the royal family, and this fact was not lost on the king. As they discussed the treatment, Raymond's apprentice, Hansen, appeared, concerned that he had missed the commotion. King Odin, grateful for Raymond's help, offered a reward. However, Raymond, without hesitation, asked only for the payment due for his services, not feeling the need to place the king in debt. Man, astounded by Raymond's humility, emphasized that they were powerful people, and Raymond could request anything he desired. But Raymond stood firm, explaining that a small fee would suffice. Man was struck by Raymond's purity, seeing that he was genuinely more interested in helping others than in wealth. When King Odin inquired about the cost of the treatment, Raymond casually stated that it would be 500 pennies, the highest rate he had ever charged for his services. King Odin, with a fierce gaze, questioned the amount, as Hansen quietly informed him that such a sum was enough to support a commoner for half a year. Yet Raymond remained confident, reiterating that 500 pennies was a fair price for the treatment. The king and Gman, however, thought differently. In their world, S-Rank healers charged at least 15,000 pennies for such services. Gman now understood why Raymond was so beloved in the Bay Area. He treated patients without overcharging. King Odin, intrigued by Raymond's values, asked why a healer of his skill would subject himself to such hardship. Raymond simply laughed, explaining that it was all for a greater purpose, to serve his patients. The king, surprised by this selfless mindset, was moved by Raymond's dedication to healing. Though King Odin appreciated Raymond's humility, he had no money on hand to pay the healer. Instead, he handed Raymond a valuable ring, instructing him to sell it to cover the cost. Raymond, thrilled by the sight of the ring, immediately saw its worth. As he examined it, Hansen pointed out that the gemstone was a mermaid's tear, worth more than 10,000 pennies. Overwhelmed by the generosity, Raymond could hardly believe his luck. As they were leaving, King Odin turned to Raymond and, with a sly smile, remarked that the ring wasn't enough to cover the full cost of what Raymond had done for him. Raymond, confused, tried to ask the king what he meant, but Odin simply promised that he would return to see how the clinic had evolved. Raymond and Hansen, bewildered by the statement, stood in silence as the royal party departed. Gman, however, had an inkling of the king's intentions. He was curious to see how his son, Raymond, would continue to grow and improve his clinic. Outside, King Odin turned to Gman and, now that his arm was healing, refocused on a more pressing issue, the assassination attempt. He instructed Gman to find the informant in the palace, as it was clear someone inside had plotted against him. Meanwhile, in a distant room, a shadowy figure, a mage, was preparing for the next phase of his plan. Staring at a map of the continent, he was puzzled by how King Odin had recovered so quickly from the lethal poison. He wondered if a highly skilled healer was responsible, but ultimately dismissed the idea, confident that such a healer couldn't interfere with his plans in the long term. The mage, swirling a glass of red wine, instructed his subordinate to finish the job within a month. The next time, he vowed, King Odin would not survive. The mage's ambition was to see the kingdom of Houston wiped from the face of the earth. Back at the clinic, Raymond and Hansen were enjoying a hearty meal, with Raymond reminding Hansen to eat plenty for his health. Their quiet dinner, however, was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. Raymond cautiously opened it, revealing a group of a dozen men dressed in suits, wearing dark sunglasses. Their leader, Toms, stepped forward, introducing himself as the head of the Dark Blade Guild, the largest criminal gang in the Bay Area. Despite the intimidating presence, Toms was polite at first, asking to speak with Raymond about an important matter. However, when he and his men entered the clinic, their behavior quickly turned disrespectful. Toms mocked Raymond's meal, poking a finger into a plate and shattering it, calling the food dog food. Hansen, whispering to Raymond, revealed that Toms came from a high-ranking family of mana users. As the thugs began throwing the food away, Raymond's anger grew. His fists clenched, but he kept his composure. Just then, a blue screen appeared, notifying Raymond that his steel heart skill had been activated, and he was prepared to deal with the gang's disrespectful behavior with confidence and calmness. Raymond, despite the menacing situation, chose to handle the bandits strategically. He began by asking the gang what brought them to his clinic, offering to help if they were in need of treatment. Toms, the leader of the Dark Blade, was taken aback by Raymond's composure, but kept his cocky grin. He explained that their visit was merely to greet the hardworking healer of the Bay Area and asked his men to present Raymond with a gift, a large bag of pennies. Both Raymond and Hansen were shocked, but Raymond, frowning, immediately questioned the true motive behind such generosity. Toms quickly revealed his real request. He wanted Raymond to stop treating anyone who opposed the Dark Blade. He explained that it wouldn't be a good look if Raymond healed those they punished. Raymond firmly stated that, as a healer, all patients were equal. Unimpressed by this stance, Toms threw his blade, narrowly missing Raymond, and began threatening him. He made it clear that even though Raymond might be the king's illegitimate son, it wouldn't save him from harm if he defied the Dark Blade. Toms pressed a dagger to Raymond's throat, emphasizing that resistance would mean a short life. Toms, confident that Raymond understood the message, buttoned his coat and patted Raymond's shoulder in a mock-friendly manner, leaving with a promise to meet again under more pleasant circumstances. As the gang left, Hansen, panicking, asked Raymond what they should do. Raymond, however, remained silent, pondering their next steps. He considered self-defense but quickly dismissed it. Toms was an expert swordsman, and Raymond couldn't abandon his patience. Suddenly, a blue screen appeared, presenting Raymond with a new quest: cure the enemy's patient. Despite the threats, the healer's instincts told him to press forward. Before they could act, two men rushed into the clinic carrying a severely injured woman. They explained that she had been beaten by the Dark Blade for failing to pay her taxes. Her ribs were broken, and blood had pooled in her lungs. Raymond quickly assessed her injuries, knowing she would die if he didn't act immediately. Hansen, terrified, reminded him of Tom's warning, but Raymond, unwilling to let the woman die, ignored him and yelled at Hansen to fetch the necessary tools. Frightened by Raymond's rare outburst, Hansen rushed off to comply. Raymond performed the operation with precision and saved the woman's life. The men who had brought her were overcome with gratitude, unable to hold back their tears. However, Hansen remained worried about the Dark Blade's reaction. As Raymond changed his clothes, Hansen caught up with him, urging him to consider running away. He suggested they seek protection from the Blue Moon Guild, a rival gang, but Raymond knew the Blue Moon wasn't strong enough to stand up to the Dark Blade. Hansen also brought up their debts, but Raymond dismissed these concerns as well, knowing that running away would only make things worse. Having completed the quest to save the woman, Raymond was awarded bonus points and skills, including a hidden bonus that allowed him to temporarily increase his rank from D to A. To his surprise, a new quest appeared, instructing him to defeat the Dark Blade Guild. Raymond was dumbfounded by the idea. How could an ordinary healer take on the most powerful gang in the Bay Area? Realizing that brute force wasn't an option, Raymond began formulating a plan. He decided to send a letter to the head of the Blue Moon Guild, hoping to orchestrate something more cunning. Hansen, though still nervous, agreed to deliver the letter. Before leaving, Hansen tried to persuade Raymond once more to flee, but Raymond refused. His loyalty to the people of the Bay Area and his belief in his role as a healer outweighed his fear. After Hansen left, Raymond accessed his blue screen and activated the hidden bonus. He enhanced his Steel Heart skill to A rank, gaining unwavering determination and resilience for the next 24 hours. With newfound strength and clarity, Raymond decided to confront the Dark Blade Guild directly. Raymond packed a suitcase and, without informing anyone, made his way to the entertainment district of Lantum, the heart of the Dark Blade's territory. When he arrived at the guild's headquarters, Toms was visibly surprised to see him. Toms had planned to summon Raymond eventually, but the healer had beaten him to it. Despite the tension, Raymond was no longer afraid. With his steel heart activated and his plan in motion, Raymond was prepared to face Toms, knowing that he now held the upper hand. With his heart of steel, Raymond begins to confidently tell Toms that he's here because he has something to say. Unexpectedly, Raymond drops to his knees before Toms and asks him for forgiveness, for the first and last time. The guild head's face remains unchanged, as if he's used to such displays. He asks Raymond why he had done something he now regrets. Raymond, growing remorseful, promises not to make such mistakes again. From now on, he pledges to serve Toms faithfully, tired of repeating his past errors. He adds that if war breaks out between the two guilds, he wants to serve as Tom's personal doctor. The guild leader's reaction remains unclear. He suddenly bursts out laughing, seemingly amused. Toms had heard Raymond wanted to serve the people of the slums, and now he's here with a very different ambition. Raymond then begins a decisive speech, moving sharply closer to Toms and alarming the guards. He whispers that all he truly cares about is money, admitting he came to the Bay Area because he couldn't get a job anywhere else. But now, having met such a great man, he doesn't want to work for a pittance. Summing up, he declares that he's willing to give his life and loyalty if accepted. This speech appeals to Toms, who understands the nature of greed. Raymond then offers to give Toms a once-over if he accepts his proposal. The guild master, intrigued, begins questioning Raymond. Raymond starts convincing Toms, saying that among ancient techniques there exists a medical checkup that can detect diseases that might appear in the future, a technique of the highest level, affordable only to the nobility. Raymond assures Toms that he's willing to examine him. Of course, Toms is immediately interested and doesn't want to miss out. Raymond then asks Toms to let the guards wait outside, claiming the medical examination is a secret technique. Toms agrees and orders all the guards to leave the room immediately. So far, everything is going according to Raymond's plan. One of the most difficult stages is behind him. Raymond takes his suitcase and asks Toms to lie down on the couch for an abdominal examination. Raymond slowly begins pressing on the guild leader's stomach, telling Toms that his abdomen seems fine. Now, Raymond says they need to check his heart function. Toms shouts, asking about the strange gizmo Raymond pulled from his suitcase, to which Raymond replies that it's an ancient artifact called a stethoscope, which can detect heart abnormalities. Raymond explains he spent a lot of money on this item, ordering it from the dwarf workshop. In complete silence, Raymond begins listening to Tom's heart. But something disturbs him. His gaze changes, his hands freeze in place, unmoving for a long moment. Raymond's face reflects fear, and he even blurts out his thoughts aloud. Toms becomes nervous, immediately asking what's wrong, to which Raymond replies that there's something wrong with his heart. Raymond quickly reassures Toms, telling him not to worry, it's something very easy to cure. He takes another close look at Tom's chest, thinking deeply. The plan is still on track. The healer has one shot to succeed, so he suddenly activates his magic, placing his hands on Tom's heart to deliver a shock. Toms, speechless, experiences the effects of Raymond's spell, which is amplified by Raymond's high intelligence level. Raymond triumphs in his mind as Tom's consciousness fades. The electric shock, despite Tom's strength, knocks him out cold. With Tom's unconscious, Raymond pulls out a long rope and begins to bind the guild leader. Now, they only need to wait for KIR to deal with the others. Raymond closes the door. While Toms is out, they have a chance to confront the Dark Blade Guild. The guild is just a band of ordinary thugs, but with Toms at the helm, it has grown powerful. Raymond eavesdrops on the bandits' conversations. They don't seem to suspect anything. Time passes slowly, and the head of the Blue Moon Guild still doesn't appear. Raymond grows anxious. Without KIR, everything could go wrong. To avoid wasting time, Raymond thinks there might be a safe with money somewhere. There's always a safe in the main office. He begins rummaging through Tom's coat for a key. Like an experienced thief, he finds a bunch of keys. All that's left is to locate the safe. Eager to rob Tom's, he starts searching the office, crawling under the desk, fumbling at every sound. When he accidentally bumps his head on the desk, he opens his eyes to see a hidden chest beneath it. Luck is on his side. Raymond, delighted, pulls the chest from under the table. However, when he opens it with the key, he is bitterly disappointed. Instead of money, the chest contains a stack of papers. Raymond had hoped to find enough money to pay off his loan, but things didn't go as planned. His curiosity gets the better of him, so he starts sifting through the papers. It turns out that these documents contain information on crimes Toms has committed. This is a gold mine, Raymond thinks, realizing that they could help him expose Toms. Unfortunately, his luck takes another turn as Toms begins to stir. He's awake, lying bound on the floor, with an expression so bitter it seems like Raymond's life might be at an end. However, Raymond, overconfident, assumes Toms won't do anything while tied up. Raymond tells him to keep quiet and even threatens him, but Toms is a powerful knight with significant mana. These ropes are nothing more than shoelaces to him. With ease, he tears them apart. The healer hadn't anticipated this. Raymond has no choice but to improvise. He makes excuses, but Toms isn't fooled. He silences Raymond, preparing to finish off the insolent healer. Desperate, Raymond resorts to his skill menu, hoping there's something that might help him escape. He has a few unused points from his last level up, so he immediately upgrades his stamina and self-defense skills. His stamina and perception increase, but it's still not enough to challenge such a strong opponent. Raymond feels stronger, but with Toms wielding mana, his confidence plummets. The guild leader stands right in front of him, raising his hand to unleash a powerful spell. Raymond, in turn, shuts his eyes, bracing himself and thinking only about how he never got the chance to get rich. Normally, he'd faint from fear, but with his heart of steel, he decides to defend himself. He quickly grabs a wooden stick nearby. Tom's laughs, but Raymond swings it with all his might and hits Tom squarely on the head. The guild leader only has time to mutter before collapsing. Raymond didn't expect such an outcome. He stares at the ordinary stick in disbelief. Tom's, a powerful knight, is knocked out cold with a single blow. Raymond realizes that, in battle, he can somehow unleash a mysterious power he never knew he had. Tom's lies face down on the floor, unconscious, and Raymond, barely believing it himself, knows he's won this round. Now all that's left is to tie him up again. Raymond heads to the window. Some shouting can be heard outside. Kainer has finally arrived. Only he thought it would be quiet, but there is a crowd outside the window. The crowd is shouting that they've come to rescue the prince, who interceded for them. Healer Raymond is shocked and doesn't understand who all those people outside the window are. An hour earlier, Hansen had delivered the letter to Kainer, but he was still worried that it wasn't enough. He was concerned about Raymond, who had gone to the guild alone. Hansen thought he had gone there to save the locals from violence and really wanted to help his teacher, not ready to sit on the sidelines. He came up with a plan. Going to the most crowded place, the square, Hansen started shouting and asking for help. He shouted at the top of his voice that Prince Raymond is now fighting for the people of the Bay Area. The residents began to gather and approach Hansen to find out more. Hansen rallied all the residents to support him, and they were willing to do anything to save their healer. Now, this mob of angry residents is ready to tear apart the entire Dark Blade Guild. Hansen sees the shadow of Raymond standing alone in the window, looking down on them. Apprentice Hansen, along with Kainer, is at a loss as to what is going on up there. Meanwhile, Sir Raymond is wildly horrified that they have made such a fuss. Kainer and Hansen shout to him that they are coming to rescue him now and ask him to bear with them for a while. Seeing the bruise on his face, Raymond shouts back for them to calm down and wait, explaining that he bumped himself while looking for the safe. But the men hear nothing, and Kainer starts climbing up the wall to save Raymond. A mob of angry citizens are ready to attack for him right now. Raymond has no choice but to grab Tom's and lift him up so everyone can see him through the window. He yells that he has already disarmed him and he is unconscious. Hansen screams, "How could you disarm a mana user?" Raymond finally gets through to them, hoping they'll calm down. Hansen begins to cheer. Raymond fought for the people of Bay and was injured. The men proclaim his name. He again tries to explain to them that it's not what they think, but it's no use. Bay Area residents raise their hands in response, thinking Raymond is waving at them. They praise him as the Prince of the Bay Area who saved their lives. Raymond realizes he has no choice but to accept the title and the praise. Raymond had no idea how he looked from the outside in the eyes of all the residents. To them, he was a prince sent from heaven itself, the kind of prince the whole country lacks. Meanwhile, word reaches the palace of Houston's King Ein. After receiving a letter with this information, Galman can't believe how Raymond managed to deal with the Dark Blade. He is told that the Hidden Prince had a real plan to sneak into the guild headquarters and disarm Toms himself. Everyone knows that Toms is one of the highest-ranking knights in the guild and he's very powerful, respected in knightly circles. Galman realizes that Raymond defeated Toms by stealth, all for the people of the Bay Area. Galman was deeply mistaken about Raymond, as he thought he was a cowardly and timid child, but now he realizes Raymond is a brave young man who isn't afraid to risk his life. Galman recalled when he was still in Raymond's clinic and saw the dedication in his eyes. The king's right hand even asked the girl who was telling him all this if Raymond himself was all right, to which she replied that he was fine, with only a small injury on his forehead. Since he had accomplished such a feat, Galman decided Raymond should be immediately rewarded. The girl interrupts Galman and informs him that this is not his main feat. She continues reading the letter, which says that Raymond found accounting documents. These secret documents contain all the criminal activities of the Dark Blade. Galman is even speechless from this information. He snatches the letter and continues reading on his own. The letter goes on to say that the documents contain a list of nobles who had dealings with the guild and were receiving dirty money. Galman asks the girl if they're sure, to which she replies that they are absolutely sure, as there's all the information about the money transfers and even a list of the heads of the Bay Area. If this document gets out, it will cause a storm in the political world. Meanwhile, the head of the Dark Blade Guild, Toms, has been locked in a dungeon. Toms is muttering to himself that when he gets out, he'll destroy Raymond, find him, and make him beg for mercy for daring to deceive him. However, there's one thing that troubles Toms: how such a dead man could strike so hard. To Toms, it felt like he'd been hit by a strong warrior. While Toms ponders, several knights appear at the entrance of his cell. He assumes they've come to free him, as he's bribed many nobles for such an occasion. But the three knights in armor looked at Toms as if he had dishonored them. They don't set about freeing Toms from the dungeon. Instead, the knights shackle his hands in metal fetters and tie a strong rope around the neck of the head of the Dark Blade Guild, sitting him on a chair as if about to interrogate him. He shouts that they don't know who he is or what family he is from. The knights reply that he's a vile criminal who kept the whole Bay Area in fear. Toms shouts that the nobles behind him won't let it go, but the knights reassure him that all the nobles had been captured. Raymond found all of Toms's secret records. They start torturing him with fire until he tells them everything about the Dark Blade Guild. After a few days of interrogation, Toms finally breaks, revealing everything, and the bribed nobles are punished. Since then, the Dark Blade Guild has been completely destroyed. Meanwhile, Sir Raymond himself doesn't fully realize how he managed to defeat the entire guild, free the slums, and become a hero. All Raymond had wanted was to keep himself alive, and now that book contains such secret information. Apprentice Hansen runs in with a plate to boost Raymond's immune system. Satisfied, he starts cooking on the barbecue, making it juicy and tasty. Raymond asks him to cook it as usual, but Hansen insists because Raymond works hard for the local people, so the meat must be of the highest quality. Raymond tries to tell him he didn't do it all for the locals, but Hansen interrupts, saying he knows what a good man Raymond is. Raymond begins to notice that his apprentice is acting weirder each time, but it doesn't matter. Raymond's reputation is growing and he has more patience because of this story. He's now a household name outside the Bay Area. Hansen suddenly remembers that Sir Raymond is at the palace to collect his reward. He asks what the master will ask for as a reward this time. The next morning, a royal carriage arrives to take Sir Raymond to the palace. He can't believe his eyes. The palace servant is polite to him, and the carriage is escorted by knights in armor. In Raymond's life a day like this has come. Not only were the princes bullying him in the palace, but the servants were purposely forgetting to give him food. They also bullied him by giving him dirty clothes and making him sleep in a cold room. As he drove slowly through the streets of the Bay Area, people began to greet Princey and wish him a good journey. All the residents ran up to the carriage, waving and eulogizing their hero. Women marveled at his beauty, calling him a true prince. Raymond didn't like being called prince. He always corrected those who addressed him, insisting he was a healer. But now, he was a hero who had dealt with a criminal gang. In response, Sir Raymond waved back at the residents of the Bay Area, imagining he'd return with a lot of money. But his mood changed dramatically, his face turning sad and shocked at the same time. Behind a few dozen neighborhood residents cheering for him, he saw the silhouette of a woman with a child. He recognized his mother and himself, walking in an embrace amidst the crowd that was praising the king. Looking closely, he saw a dark-haired woman with a child in her arms. The child was sick, emaciated from starvation, with thin limbs and a bloated stomach. There were too many children like this in the Bay Area slums, starving due to a lack of money. Despite recent events, the people in the neighborhood still lived in poverty. Raymond kept looking at this exhausted child, sitting in his mother's arms, and clenched his fists, thinking that a simple healer like him shouldn't have to worry about such things. Poverty in areas like this should be dealt with by King Odin himself and his Prime Minister, Man. He tried to refocus on the reward he was about to receive, thinking he had already done enough for the residents. But the image of the poor, malnourished child wouldn't leave his mind. Healer Raymond was up to something. He opened his blue screen, where a new quest appeared. He knew he had to think carefully about his reward. After making his choice, he would receive it. Finally, the royal carriage arrived at King Odin's palace. Raymond intended to simply take the money, walking with a confident gait and his head held high. The palace servants looked at him with disbelief, likely unaware of his recent exploits. To them, he was still the filthy brat they thought belonged in the slums because no clinic would hire him. They whispered that he was an illegitimate child, no more than trash. As he passed by, Raymond's cheekbones tensed with anger, sick of hearing the same insults over and over. It wasn't his fault he was born out of wedlock. He was already thinking of revenge. When he became a great healer, those filthy tongues would beg at his feet, and he would make them pay dearly for his cures. As he passed these sneering servants, he was stunned to see Her Highness, Princess Sophia, standing before him in full parade attire. She angrily reprimanded the servants who were gossiping about Raymond, accusing them of idleness and threatening to check on their work immediately. The servants apologized, promising to do their jobs to avoid her wrath. Raymond was surprised to see her in such a bad mood, though he could recall other days when she had been kind. With her arms crossed, Princess Sophia continued to glare at him with a royal seriousness. Raymond greeted her with a bow, but she remained standing there, making him increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, she broke the silence, saying that she just happened to see him, though she emphasized she wasn't looking for him. Raymond chuckled at the emphasis, which made Sophia snap at him, saying she had much to do and he should go wherever he pleased. As he turned to leave, she called out for him to wait. With a tone of mock indifference, she asked him what reward he would ask from the king, suggesting that he think carefully before answering. Sophia hinted that this could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, depending on his choice. Raymond was left pondering her words as he continued toward the banquet hall. Upon entering, he was surprised to see King Odin in attendance, along with Prime Minister Gman, and even Prince Karen and the third Prince of Liberton. He hadn't expected an audience with the king and felt his nerves getting the best of him. The two princes eyed him with disdain, grinning mockingly. Third Prince Liberton muttered about Raymond's success with the residents, noting that while the other princes had failed to gain their support, Raymond had somehow won their loyalty. Karen sneered, dismissing Raymond as a puppy, though he was starting to see him as useful to have on his side. After paying tribute to King Odin, Raymond was asked to come closer. He approached nervously, a thin sheen of sweat on his face. Though his father, King Odin, sat regally on his throne, Raymond felt no bond with him. The king thanked him for exposing the Dark Blade Guild's corruption, acknowledging his bravery. Finally, the king asked what he wanted as a reward. In Raymond's mind, there was only one thought: money. But he remembered Princess Sophia's words and couldn't help but wonder what she meant. The opportunity to receive more than money seemed rare, and perhaps he could ask for something truly meaningful. He thought of the people in the Bay Area, the poverty he'd witnessed, and finally, a new idea struck him. He apologized to the king, saying there was indeed something he'd be honored to receive. King Odin, sitting sternly on his throne, asked what it was. Raymond hesitated, realizing the king was his biological father yet felt like a complete stranger. But he stood firm, ready to make a request that would change everything. Raymond's blue screen informed him that he was choosing the path of a doctor, a healer with a heart of steel who changes society for his patients. Yet, Raymond hadn't chosen anything himself. He was more interested in money. A doctor, after all, treats people, but how could he truly make a difference? All he wanted was a reward that could benefit both him and the Bay Area. When Raymond voiced his wish, asking for money, King Odin's gaze changed dramatically. He hadn't expected Raymond to ask for such a thing. Whispers began among the nobles, questioning what else that vile, illegitimate son could possibly want. But Raymond remained steadfast, explaining that he wanted the funds specifically for the Bay Area. Raymond had heard that a large sum of money had been recovered from the Dark Blade Guild and the bribes taken by nobles. He believed that wealth, taken from the residents of the Bay Area, rightfully belonged back to them. His bold request left everyone stunned: King Odin, Prime Minister Gman, and even Princes Karen and Liberton. They hadn't expected such a selfless plea from the hidden prince. Raymond continued, asserting that the wealth of the Dark Blade and corrupt nobles had been gained at the expense of the Bay Area's residents. Using those funds to improve the neighborhood was only fair. Gman, observing Raymond's transformation from a shy boy into a decisive figure, couldn't help but admire him. It was clear that royal blood ran through Raymond's veins. Raymond outlined his plans to improve living conditions, subsidize herbs and medicine, and combat poverty in the Bay Area. Though this would benefit his reputation and attract patients to his unconventional healing techniques, Raymond admitted that widespread adoption of his methods would require further recognition. And speaking directly to the king provided him with an unparalleled platform for fame. King Odin asked Raymond to elaborate on how he would use the money. Caught off guard, Raymond hesitated but quickly explained his priorities: improving the environment by addressing sanitation, cleaning the streets, and ensuring access to clean water. Such measures, he argued, would reduce disease and death in the Bay Area. King Odin, though impressed, remarked that it wasn't enough to raise the area's standard of living. The discussion turned into a debate among the royal family. Prince Liberton proposed supplying grain to address famine, but Gman pointed out that such a solution was temporary. Prince Karen dismissed the Bay Area's residents as beggars, unworthy of investment, which embarrassed King Odin, who chastised his son's callousness. Returning to Raymond, King Odin asked for further suggestions. Despite doubts from the nobles, Raymond stood firm. He suggested widening streets to allow for easier transportation and increasing security to root out illegal activities. Transforming the Bay Area into a commercial hub could make a lasting impact. Raymond elaborated on the area's potential. Its proximity to the Alpine Road, the main route to the capital, made it a prime location for commerce. Merchants currently avoided it due to its dangers, but if the area were made safe, it could attract significant trade. Additionally, Raymond pointed out the nearby Lantham Entertainment District. Though infamous for its illegal activities, it could be reformed into a family-friendly destination, driving more visitors and economic growth. Gman agreed, noting that the fall of the Dark Blade Guild had created an opportunity to clean up the Bay Area. A revitalized neighborhood would not only help its residents but also strengthen the kingdom's economy. King Odin's eyes gleamed with approval. He immediately ordered Gman to consult with the administration and begin planning the proposed reforms. Raymond was surprised by the king's swift action, as Odin was known to be cautious. For the first time, Raymond felt a sense of recognition from his father. As Raymond bowed to thank the king, Odin addressed him again. Noting that Raymond had asked for nothing for himself, the king decided to bestow an additional reward: